Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Hello, Sadbot. How you doing? Welcome. Today is going to be Theme Parks 101, the wild and wacky histories of theme parks. Howdy. I hope everyone's doing well. All right, time for what's probably one of the most what's the word? Infamous theme parks, at least in the US. Action Park. Ah! You get no ad time here. Go away. There's a skip button, there's no skip button. You get no ad time on my channel, god damn it. Hang on, is there a skip? Yes, there's a skip button. Hang on.
Open once again.
Fantastic. Anna Gilligan is there this morning. Hello, Anna.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I think you're seeing some guys jump off the Tarzan jump here at Action Park. It's been closed since 1996. They reopened it on June 14th. I'm here with the owner, Andrew Mulhaville. He's also the son of the man who founded it. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for coming out. What a day we have. It's beautiful here at Action Park.
So I got to ask you, because Action Park got a bit of a reputation.
The most dangerous theme park in the US. Possibly the
some
world.
People got injured.
That was 30 years ago. The world has changed. I mean, when my dad started the park, he was the guy inventing the rides and bringing inventors in. Now it's highly regulated. Everything's engineered.
I love Action Park because it's so beautiful.
You're in for a ride, believe me. Oh man, the stories about this place. Like, people straight up died.
The year is 1976. Gene Mulvihill, the head of entertainment company Great American Recreation, has added a new attraction to Vernon, New Jersey's Vernon Valley Ski Resort. Two brand new alpine slides were installed to keep business up in the off-season. An alpine slide is a one-person cart
lurking,
ride,
are
in which the
you?
rider rides
Well,
down a
have
hill on a
fun
smooth
with
track.
that.
The rider has a brake lever in between their legs, giving them complete control of their speed. The attraction had become popular for ski resorts in the late 70s, and Vernon Valley Ski Resort's alpine slide was advertised as an attraction for all ages, claiming, "We've had grandfathers and we've had kids of kindergarten age coming down our runs alone." I also have a picture showing a mother controlling the sled with an infant in her arms. It's that easy. After the success of the slide, Mulvihill went forward with his plans to expand the ski resort into a water park during the off-season. He added 2 water slides and a racetrack, and more slides, a softball field, a tennis court, and a swimming pool were added shortly thereafter. The Vernon Valley Summer Park was rebranded to Action Park, a thrilling amusement park where you control the action. More slides and rides were added, and they began their big marketing push to draw audiences into their new water park.
Just go to Action Park. There's no other park like it.
I'll bet no other park like it.
With your family. So lots of big things for little kids to do. I love Action Park because it's so beautiful.
It's like coming to Broadway. It's wonderful.
Race like a pro. It's great. These are the most amazing rides in the world. I love it here. There's nothing in the world like Action Park.
The park was
For a
revolutionary.
reason.
Not only was it one of the first water parks of its kind in the United States, but it also marketed itself as the biggest. It was eventually home to 75 rides, 40 of which were water slides. Action Park was split into 3 themed lands. The first was... Motorworld consisted of 3 types of attractions: land, water, and air rides. On land was the popular battle action tanks. For an additional fee, guests could ride inside tanks equipped with tennis ball cannons. The goal was to shoot the other tanks in the caged area on one of their targets, disabling their cannons for 15 seconds. Those that chose to ride the tanks were allotted 5 minutes to do so, and those that did not want to ride could pay to use a stationary cannon from the outside. Maintenance employees attempting to fix broken down tanks would be subject to fire from the rowdy guests, making the attraction a nightmare to work at. The other 2 land-based Motor World attractions were the Lola Cars and the Super Go-Karts, both of which were kart race attractions. The Super Go-Karts were driven on a small loop. The carts themselves were designed to max out at 20 miles per hour, but the employees found that sticking a tennis ball in the governor device allowed the cart to go as fast as possible, with the new maximum speed being around 50 miles an hour. Head-on collisions frequently sent guests to the hospital, and the fumes from the engines overwhelmed riders at times.
How the hell do you... Did they catch this in Q&A? Like shoving a tennis ball into some spot allowed it to max out at 50 miles an hour? People passing out because of the fumes? I mean, there was no QA, was there?
The Lolo cars were mini open cockpit race cars driven on a longer track, and they cost an additional charge to ride. Their maximum speed could also be tampered with by park employees. These were also used after hours by the workers, sometimes being taken off the track and driven on the nearby highway. There were 2 water rides in Motorworld. The super speedboats were driven in a small circle around an island in a pond that also had a large population of snakes in it. The guests would often attempt to bump nearby boats, as if they were on Motorworld's other water attraction, bumper boats. These were boats placed in a small pool and were designed to withstand guests crashing into one another. These were known to leak gasoline, which once required a guest to be examined after too much fuel leaked on their skin. The boats were also incredibly small, and riders with long legs had to position their feet off the side of the boat to fit. This led to injuries and bone fractures after collisions. Finally, Motorworld had 2 airbase attractions. One was Space Shot, which was a typical drop tower ride and was one of the safest rides at the park, given it was only open for Action Park's last operating year. The second air ride was another upcharge attraction, Slingshot, which was also fairly safe. This ride was a common amusement park and carnival ride, in which guests were shot up on 2 bungee cords and flipped upside down as they flew through the air. There's no doubt that Motorworld had its dangerous attractions, but this is just the beginning of what Action Park has in store. Another section of the park was... Many non-water-based attractions were located in their own section.
Hello there, the one who walks alone? Kinda ominous. You're not like the one who waits, right? Because that guy... I don't suppose you watch Doctor Who. Unless you do, I don't think you would get my reference. But at any rate, welcome. Today is Theme Parks 101 with Defunctland. And the very first video is the infamous Action Park. Infamous because people died there. That's what happened.
Of the park, sometimes labeled the Alpine Center. These included the aforementioned Alpine slides, as well as a bungee jump titled the Snapple Snap Up Whippersnapper ride. Originally having 2 jump stations and then later 4, guests could jump off the tower for an additional fee. A skate park also had a short run at Action Park.
You're not the one who waits, nor are you the one who knocks. Oh, thank goodness. You're just someone who walks alone.
Was poorly designed, as it was surrounded by concrete and had uneven edges, which led to many injuries during its existence. Interestingly, Action Park also had an attraction entitled the Action Park Gladiator Challenge, partially based off of the popular American Gladiators TV show. This included obstacle courses and jousting matches against the Action Park Gladiators. Finally, Action Park had its own monorail called the Transmobile. This went to the Ski Lodge, the Alpine Center, and to Motorworld. So far, Action Park has proved to be dangerous, but where are the absolutely terrifying rides? Where are the rides that are so insane that their mere existence is unbelievable? Moreover, where are the water slides? This section put the action in Action Park. Waterworld had it all. It was home to the Tidal Wave Pool, a 100 feet by 200 feet pool that could hold anywhere between 500 and 1,000 people. The pool's floor was slanted, and the further a guest went in it, the deeper it got. Waves went 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and they could reach a height of over 3 feet. This was challenging for swimmers of all skill levels, as the pool was hard to read and the fresh water was more difficult to swim in than salt water. A dozen lifeguards were on duty at the pool, and they would have to save around 30 people on a busy day. The Tarzan swing was a heavily advertised attraction in which guests would swing on a 20-foot cable over a pool. This spring-fed pool was so cool that lifeguards would have to rescue guests that could not swim after the shock of the cold water. This was also a popular attraction for men to pull down their pants or women to pull up their tops for the line of people to see. The appropriately named Aqua Scoot gave guests a sled, with which they would slide down an assembly line style roller coaster, hurtling them toward a shallow pool that they would skip across. If the guest was not in an ideal position, they would get caught under the water, sending the rider crashing forward. There were originally a pair of these slides, each 30 feet long, but a third slide was eventually added. The diving cliffs had two jumping bases, one 23 feet and the other 18 feet tall, with the pool below being 16 feet. The pool was also for non-jumpers, some of which were unaware of the cliffs, which resulted in collisions. There was only one lifeguard on duty, who had to work extra hard to make sure that no one was at the bottom of the pool. The super speed water slides, also known as Geronimo Falls, were a pair of high-speed vertical water slides. One of them was steeper than the other, and both were dangerous. Near these was the safer Kamikaze, which was a more traditional
I'm pretty sure I
tube
did
slide.
say that
the
people
kayak
died
experience
here.
was pretty self-explanatory, and used underwater fans to simulate water rapids. This was dangerous, but that goes without saying at this point. A similar ride, the Roarin' Rapids, allowed guests to ride in a 1 or 2 person raft down a similar river. The Surf Hill had riders slide down a multi-laned, multi-hill slide on a mat. Riders could easily cross over to the adjacent lanes and cause collisions. And the 7th hill, nicknamed the Backbreaker, had an additional hump that would send riders flying, resulting in injury. The Colorado River Ride was another raft ride, this time allowing up to 4 people, and it went through the wooded area of the park. At one point, the riders would come to a fork in the river and had to choose between 2 paths. The first path took guests under a waterfall and a series of tunnels. The second path included a waterfall and another fork, with one path being steeper than the other. The ride also included a foot-tall jump that would allow riders and their raft a short airtime. The Aerodonium was a skydiving simulator that caused injuries when guests would try to stop their falls with their arms. Waterworld also had a variety of other typical water slides and pools that were less notable, but there is one in particular that has yet to be mentioned. This is the attraction that made Action Park the most infamous, the Cannonball Loop. A tubed water slide with a vertical loop, similar to that of a roller coaster. It was rumored that during the testing of the attraction, Mulvihill offered $100 to employees who were willing to try it. Test dummies apparently came out of the loop without their heads. When it was open, guests would be weighed, hosed down, and given a set of instructions to decrease the possibility of injury. A hatch was added to the top of the loop to assist stuck riders that could not make it all the way through the slide. Many guests that completed the loop would come out at the bottom, suffering from bloody noses or other injuries, either from hitting the top of the loop or the impact on the way down. The Cannonball Loop was indicative of a larger issue with Action Park, as many of the other attractions were poorly crafted by designers that were less than engineers, and most were designed to minimize cost rather than maximize safety. The rides became even more dangerous when paired with the fact that the park sold alcohol at many of the convenience stands, often
that's
to
not a
minors.
good idea.
There was even a microbrewery near Motorworld. Many of the guests visiting the inexpensive park came from low-income areas, and did not have the necessary swimming skills to navigate some of the attractions and pools. Action Park also heavily marketed to Spanish populations, but there were no translations or translators for the guests when they visited, so explaining safety instructions was virtually impossible.
You already know that Action Park has the most innovative and exciting rides. The Alpine Slide, Grand Prix race cars, and spectacular water rides. But Action Park means more than just great rides. It means super live shows, fantastic summer festivals, and scrumptious food and drink, including an authentic German brewery. Come to Action Park because the rides aren't the only thing that's great. Labor Day Polish Festival, September 6th and 7th.
That's so 90s.
The majority of those employees were teenagers and were not equipped to handle the rowdy guests of the park. So on any given day, you could have an overcrowded water park filled with drunk teenagers that couldn't swim, riding shoddily built attractions supervised by teenagers that may or may not be able to communicate with them. It is no wonder what happened next.
Death.
On July 8th, 1980, a male employee was riding the Alpine Slide when his cart went off the track. He hit his head on a rock during the crash, killing him. He was only 19. 2 years later, on July 24th, 1982, a 15-year-old guest was overcome by the waves of the tidal wave pool and drowned. On August 1st, a mere week later, a 27-year-old guest was riding the kayak experience when he was trying to re-enter his kayak after falling out. When doing this, he made contact with the live wiring that powered the underwater fans. The electrocution sent him into cardiac arrest, and he passed after being rushed to the hospital. 2 years later, in 1984, a guest died on the Tarzan swing after a heart attack, supposedly due to the unexpected shock from the cold water. That same year, on August 27th, a 20-year-old drowned in the tidal wave pool. And on July 19th, 1987, another guest drowned there, giving it the nickname the Grave Pool. These deaths are tragic, and often overshadowed by the lunacy and legacy of Action Park. Interestingly enough, Action Park was able to avoid many lawsuits with these deaths and many other injuries, due in part to its reputation, and also the lax regulations New Jersey had for amusement and water parks. Great American Recreation was even able to expand the Action Park brand to other parts of the country, opening Pocono Action Park in Tannersville, Pennsylvania in 1980, and Action Mountain in Pine Hill, New Jersey in 1984.
Get wet. Get wet at Action Mountain. Feel the thrill as you zoom through the
Oh god,
black
this is
hole.
so 90s.
Spin and splash on our bumper boats. While the kids play in our fun-filled kiddie area, cool off in our huge swimming pool, or race around the Grand Prix track. Get wet on any of our action-packed rides at Action Mountain in Pine Hill, New Jersey. It's awesome.
Pocono Action Park had many repeat attractions as Action Park, and was closed in 1991. Action Mountain ran into some financial difficulties with the IRS and the town it was located in, and was closed in 1986. So why did the original
don't mess with the IRS.
While Action Park and Mulvihill were able to avoid lawsuits with many of the accidents and deaths, the two deaths in 1984 stemmed cases that rightfully plagued the park with a variety of legal problems. Mulvihill eventually pled guilty to 5 charges of insurance fraud. He and his associates claimed that the park saw over 1 million guests a year, and therefore the death toll was comparatively low. The local ER, on the other hand, said that they would have to treat 5 to 10 guests on some days. In response to the high amount of guests visiting the hospital, Action Park bought Vernon, New Jersey new ambulances. Despite all of these issues, the downfall of Action Park wouldn't come until 1996, and it was actually due to Great American Recreation's financial issues and not the park itself. On September 2nd, 1996, Action Park ended its final season, still with the hope that it would reopen the next year. However, Great American Recreation's bankruptcy made it impossible for Action Park to continue operations, so it didn't reopen. After this, the ski resort and Action Park were handed from investor to investor, undergoing renovations for 2 years before reopening in 1998 as Mountain Creek. Safety was a priority under this management, and a valiant effort was put forth to distance Mountain Creek from Action Park's reputation. However, in 2010, Mountain Creek underwent a bankruptcy of its own, and the water park and ski resort was sold to the Mulvihill family. 2 years after this, in 2012, Eugene Mulvihill passed away, and his son Andrew Mulvihill took over ownership of the park. 2 years later, in 2014, Mountain Creek was rebranded back to Action Park. The park reopened many of its classic attractions and started construction on new, terrifying ones. The Sky Caliber was another attempt at a 360-degree vertically looping water slide, although it used technology to enhance safety. From my knowledge, it is yet to open at the park, and there's almost no information on its status. The new Action Park tried to use nostalgia to draw guests back for 2 years, before in 2016 it was renamed back to Mountain Creek, in order to once again get away from the negative connotation of Action Park. Early this year it was announced that Johnny Knoxville would be producing, writing, and starring in a film inspired by Action Park, but it was not shot on location. Death is heartbreaking, especially in environments designed for happiness and joy. Despite 6 people losing their lives there, Action Park is not remembered for its death toll. It is remembered for and by the kids that grew up with it and survived it. It is seen as a place where the quote-unquote popular and brave teens hung out. The fact that it was referred to as Traction Park or Class Action Park doesn't matter, because its inherent danger is more of a fond memory to the majority of its visitors. The burns, bruises, and the fractured tibias were a rite of passage for its former guests. You think you're cool because you survived a tame roller coaster at Disney in California or at Universal in Florida? Well, welcome to Vernon, New Jersey. Were you able to survive Action Park?
A rite of passage to make it out alive?
Fun!
Nice job.
Wait, she's gonna go swim and get a microphone. She'll give us her.
Oh, look at her. It's like out of a movie.
This is good. Where is she?
Wait a second.
We lost
What
Anna.
happened to her?
Greg, you need to go
Here
rescue
we go.
Anna.
Let's see. Let's just take a. Indeed. Yay! First of all,
And starting on Saturday,
nice bathing suit.
they're open from 10:30
Greg.
to 7.
Stay.
Nice bathing suit? Dude, this is like live news and he's like being a creep. I think the rest of this is just that guy being a creep. So yeah. This is what happens when you're being really, really negligent with your parks. People die. Oh yeah, there was a newer one I wanted to see. Ah, here it is. Kid Cities. Wait, how long is that? An hour? Okay, never mind. That's too long. I thought that was shorter. Alright, worst Disney attraction ever. Here we go.
Unnecessary action here.
Nope. Nope, you don't get ad time here. Go away.
It's the light. It's getting the light.
I think it's fantastic.
Mr. Eisner?
Oh, hi, Michael.
Oh, certainly, Mr. Eisner. Sorry.
Oh. Thanks for the follow, one who walks alone. That feel when no ad blocker, yeah. Well, I do have an ad blocker, I just don't use it on YouTube because I don't want to get in trouble and, like, get banned or something. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk it.
Sorry to disturb you, but I'm delivering to you Mr. Barry Boswick and Mr. Richard Kind. If you'll just sign for them. Really? Yeah, right on there. Thank you very much.
Oh,
right.
Hey, Michael. Richard.
Hi, Michael.
Barry. So?
Yeah, we were told to meet the Big Cheese at the Disneyland Resort.
The Big Cheese. I'm not the big. I wish I was the Big Cheese. This is the Big Cheese.
Oh! Hiya, fellas! Gee, I've been looking for you all day. Well, I want to give you a personal tour of Disney's California Adventure. Ooh, what do you say we start with a ride on California Screamin'?
So, Mickey, it's just you and me, and I love that ride, and I want to go on it with you.
Aw. Okay, boss.
Okay, boss. And you know, Mickey, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful theme park.
You betcha.
It wasn't. And now the story of a company in panic and the one CEO who just couldn't seem to catch a break. It is Defunctland. On July 17th, 1955, Disneyland opened its gates to the public, and along with elaborate theming, it had an expansive, magical parking lot. Due to its placement in Anaheim, Disneyland's land was far from sprawling. This made the parking lot prime real estate for any kind of expansion, including a potential second gate. While a variety of concepts for a second park were proposed over the years, it wouldn't be until 1982 that the Walt Disney Company would seriously begin to consider it. On October 1st of that year, Epcot Center in Orlando, Florida's Walt Disney World opened. This created the Walt Disney World Resort as it is known today, and it made a multi-day vacation to the resort necessary if guests were going to explore all of the offerings. 2 years later in 1984, it was becoming increasingly clear that, despite Epcot's success, Disney as a company was not doing well. A string of box office failures from their studio and big budget projects for the parks had brought Disney to the lowest point in the company's history, and many feared a takeover. In a bold move by the company, then CEO and President Ron Miller was ousted, and Michael Eisner was brought in as the company's new CEO. Eisner had big plans for the company, the most notable of which were to turn the company's failing studios around, make the existing Disney parks more appealing to older audiences, expand internationally with the addition of a European park, and finally make Anaheim a multi-day resort with the addition of a second gate. In 1987, the Walt Disney Company acquired the Rather Corporation. Decades earlier in the mid-1950s, Walt Disney had asked oil tycoon and television producer Jack Rather to build the Disneyland Hotel, since Disney lacked the funds, having spent most of his money constructing Disneyland. Since then and up until Disney's acquisition in 1987, the Rather Corporation had owned the Disneyland Hotel and property near the theme park. The obvious next step after obtaining the necessary assets was to finally build a second theme park in the Disneyland Resort, and it might have been that simple, had Eisner not gotten distracted.
Distracted? Meanwhile, in
apart
Long
from
Beach.
the Disneyland Hotel, the Rather Corporation also owned the RMS Queen Mary, a retired ocean liner that was permanently docked in Long Beach, California. After Disney acquired the Rather Corporation, Eisner became interested in transforming the Queen Mary and surrounding land into a new resort called Port Disney. Port Disney was to feature hotels, a cruise ship dock, and an all-new ocean-themed amusement park called Disney Sea. Eisner pitted the cities of Anaheim and Long Beach against one another, trying to decide whether to build Disney Sea as the second gate to the Disneyland Resort or build it in Long Beach within Port Disney. The announcement was made in
going to sleep, enjoy the rest of my stream? Alright. Well, thanks for stopping by. Toa, huh? At any rate, thanks for stopping by. Hope you had fun. I know I did. But yeah, you get some rest.
in January of 1990, and Anaheim and Long Beach both worked with Disney in order to bring the new theme park to their city. However, the citizens of both cities were not thrilled with the Disney expansion, citing the issues the residential neighborhoods of Anaheim already faced due to the existing park. This, along with a variety of other legal, logistical, and budgetary issues, caused Eisner to announce in late 1991 that plans for Port Disney and Disney Sea had been scrapped in favor of an alternative idea that the Imagineers had been drafting. Due to the popularity of Florida's Epcot, Eisner and the Imagineers believed that a West Coast version of the park was the best idea for Disneyland's second gate. The park would have been almost identical to Epcot, with a few notable changes, such as a larger spaceship Earth, improved Future World attractions, and a much different world showcase, including a steel dragon coaster in the Asia Pavilion and a boat cruise around the entire world. Westcott was announced at the same time as the cancellation of Port Disney and Disney Sea in 1991. 1 year later, Euro Disneyland would open, which, for a variety of reasons that are too long to discuss here, failed horribly. The budget for the parks division was cut dramatically, and as ideas for Westcott grew, it became clear that the company could not afford such an expansion. But Eisner did not give up on the Disneyland resort, and despite the issues, went forward with his plans for a second park. Eisner had a simple technique that he often used when he decided on new projects. The technique is known as jealousy. Whenever Eisner saw another company doing something successfully, he decided that Disney would do the same thing. Moreover, he would take the idea and do basically the same thing in basically the same place. For instance, after seeing the success of the amusement park zoo hybrid Busch Gardens Tampa in the early 90s, he greenlit Disney's Animal Kingdom. The park was just over an hour from Busch Gardens. After seeing the success of the Church Street Station nightclubs in Orlando, Florida, Eisner greenlit his own nightclubs in Pleasure Island at the Disney Village Marketplace. Pleasure Island was about half an hour from Church Street Station. So when Westcott was canceled and Disney returned to the drawing board, it wouldn't be long until Eisner was presented with a new idea. Since the Disneyland Resort at the time provided such a short visit to vacationers, many of the guests would go explore the other tourist offerings of California after their trip. Disneyland president Paul Pressler recognized this and pitched an idea to Eisner. If Disney could provide all the sights and attractions of the state of California within the Disneyland Resort, then guests would have no reason to leave and spend their money elsewhere. This concept would develop into the plans for California Adventure, a California-themed theme park to be located in the already California-themed California. Concept art for the park was released in 1996, a year after Westcott was canceled. The release stated that California Adventure would feature everything from soaring above Yosemite Valley to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood movie making. The original concept art from the park had a sense of serenity, and it seemed to be designed as an intimate, romantic tribute to California. In the Hollywood section of the park, there was to be a recreation of the theme building, the observation deck, and former restaurant at the Los Angeles International Airport, which was being renovated by Walt Disney Imagineering around the time that California Adventure was in development. This was to be the show building to one of California Adventure's signature attractions, Superstar Limo, a high-speed dark ride that would take guests on a wild paparazzi chase through Hollywood. As guests boarded the attraction, they would be greeted by Michael Eisner himself. Eisner would tell guests that they had to get to the big premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater as soon as possible to sign a contract for their next film. But he warned guests that the paparazzi were all over town, and if they were caught doing anything to ruin their image, then Eisner would have to cancel the deal. The limo driver would then floor it in an attempt to get guests to the movie premiere on time. According to Disney historian Jim Hill, the ride system would have been a combination of a traditional dark ride and a family-friendly roller coaster. The ride would have also included a variety of jokes and gags. For instance, guests would fly past the famous Tail of the Pup hot dog stand with a large man in rhinestones creating sounds of flatulence. But as guests turned the corner, it would become clear that this was actually Elvis Presley squirting mustard onto a hot dog. The ride ended with guests reaching the Chinese Theater, only to have Eisner tell them that he would have to cancel the contract because they had been caught by the paparazzi. Then, a picture taken of guests while on the ride would be shown, cropped into a tabloid reporting on their limo chase. After this, guests would exit and walk the red carpet into the Chinese Theater, which was the gift shop and exit to the attraction, where fake Oscars, on-ride photos, and t-shirts would have been sold. The original concept of Superstar Limo was nothing groundbreaking, but it seemed that it would have been a fun dark ride that would have fit perfectly in the Hollywood section of the park. However, the mid-90s version of the attraction would not be the one that guests experienced when the park opened, and this time, it wasn't Eisner's fault.
Then who was it to blame?
In August of 1997 in Paris, France, Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in a limo accident. Her driver was supposedly fleeing from paparazzi when he lost control of the wheel. The tragedy captured the attention of the entire world, who grieved the death of the princess and the other passengers. As for Eisner and his team, they now had a big problem. Superstar Limo could no longer be a high-speed paparazzi chase, because it would now seem that it was some sort of twisted reference to the tragedy. The Imagineers scrambled, briefly considering cloning a Disney MGM attraction to the Anaheim Park. Top contenders were the Great Movie Ride, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, or Rock and Roller Coaster, which at the time was still in development. Of these, the Tower of Terror was probably considered to be the top contender, as Eisner was heavily pushing for the idea of a ride-hotel hybrid. On top of most everyone besides him thinking that this was a bad idea that logistically would be problematic, if not impossible, it was also clear that the budget for California Adventure would not allow for this, or any of the other potential attractions, which meant that the Hollywood section of the park would not have a ride on opening day. Or would it? Forced, whether by situation or executives, to write a treatment for an acceptable version of Superstar Limo, the Imagineers had a few solutions. 1. Remove most of the references to paparazzi. 2. Remove any high-speed element by having the limos inch forward through the show building. And 3. Add more setting-specific jokes and gags. The idea wasn't good, and the Imagineers considered Superstar Limo to be dead. Unfortunately, if their job was to please the boss, they had done it a little too well. Eisner, who had been in the entertainment industry for decades, adored the inside jokes and Hollywood gags. He loved them so much that he greenlit the new, terrible version of the attraction. Imagineering, most likely baffled at what they now had to do, did their best to make the attraction work. This included scrapping the Chinese theater gift shop, and adding the theater as a show scene in the ride in order to fill time. After budgets were slashed even more, the theme building exterior was scrapped in favor of a cartoonish cutout look. This art style was also used within the ride itself. The only three-dimensional animated figures would be that of celebrities. But due to the lack of budget, these would have to be celebrities whose likenesses were cheap or stars that the Walt Disney Company already had contracts with. Also, these were not animatronics, but barely animated figures with minimal, unconvincing movement. At some point, Eisner realized that the ride was going to be bad, so he made a few quick changes.
Oh, hey Michael. Went to get groceries? Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. By the way, today it is Theme Parks 101 with more Defunctland. This time... Oh yeah, I think you missed the one about... I think you missed the one about Action Park, the US's deadliest theme park, with 6 deaths. 6. And now this is about Disney's worst ride ever.
Changes to save face. First, he removed a reference to DreamWorks animation that read Dream Jerks Animation, which referenced the ongoing feud between former president of Walt Disney Studios Jeffrey Katzenberg, who now worked for DreamWorks, and Eisner. Also, Eisner asked,
"You seem to remember Action Park?" Yeah, if you do, you probably heard that people died there, which they did. 6 people.
Imagineering to remove him from the ride, and the on-ride footage was replaced with a sleazy Hollywood agent barking orders at guests, proving that Superstar Limo foreshadowed more than one catastrophe. The retooled ride opened with California Adventure on February 8th, 2001. So was it as bad as they thought it would be? Yes. Yes, it was.
It was as bad as they thought it was. Peck off. No ad time. You get no ad time from me. Skip.
Here and around Hollywood Boulevard, there's lots of fun and interesting places to eat and shop, all geared to bring out the Hollywood in everyone. And if you've ever wanted to be a star, then you have to ride Superstar Limo.
The cartoon cutout exterior of Superstar Limo features a variety of landmarks from Los Angeles, such as Union Station, City Hall, and the Beverly Hills Hotel. One section features the world's shortest railway, Los Angeles' Angel's Flight. The railway, which was constructed in 1901, had recently reopened, but an accident resulted in the death of a passenger on February 1st, 2001, exactly 1 week before California Adventure and Superstar Limo would open. However, the prominent reference on the queue's exterior would not be removed. Another interesting feature was the flower bed that was decorated to look like a pool. After making their way into the queue, guests would find themselves in the baggage claim area in the LAX airport. The inside jokes to California and the entertainment industry would begin with a female announcer giving instructions to arriving passengers.
The white zone is for loading and unloading only. No schmoozing.
Further into the queue, guests would encounter television screens playing an entertainment news report featuring a horrifying puppet version of the late Joan Rivers. Rivers would describe Hollywood's next biggest star, who was set to arrive at LAX that day. The star turns out to be the guests entering the ride. In this queue area, there were more cartoon cutouts that helped foreshadow what a terrible experience guests were about to have. One example of this was a baggage carousel with packaged Oscars. After guests winded their way through the queue, they would approach the ground transportation section of the airport and board their limo. A sparkly, purple, cartoonish limo. A cast member guides them into their cars and tells them to enjoy their premiere. Guests are then sent on their way into their soon-to-be recurring nightmare. An announcer tells them to keep their hands, feet, and egos in the limo at all times. Ha! The limo enters a dark tunnel, and the guest agent appears on the screen attached to the ride's vehicle. Despite being a creepy, gross puppet, this turned out to be the most realistic part of the ride.
Now don't be late, babe.
The first showroom is Beverly Hills, and Regis Philbin pops out of the door, fanning himself with money. Next up, Melanie Griffith with Antonio Banderas, then immediately following, Cindy Crawford. And this is just the beginning. The next show scene is the Sunset Strip. Here, guests get to see Tim Allen and Jackie Chan. After this, guests enter a second tunnel and are reminded by their agent to not be late. The third show scene is Bel Air, where guests can see Drew Carey with a handful of star maps. Guests also run into sponsors trying to get them to sign advertising deals. A third tunnel features another reminder from their agent before the Malibu show scene. Here, guests encounter Cher, standing in the corner of the scene as if she doesn't want to be there. The limo then enters the studio lobby, where guests encounter paparazzi, screenwriters, and production assistants, all represented through cheap cutouts. After this, guests arrive for their premiere, where none other than Whoopi Goldberg greets them. Guests are shown an on-ride photo of themselves before entering a final tunnel, where their agent tells them that they are a superstar. And that was Superstar Limo.
Damn. That's just
So
as
now
lame
everybody,
as the
I thought we'd go
SeaWorld
on
thing.
Superstar limo.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Well,
Because I'm on it.
Excellent.
that's right, because you're on it. Here at California Adventures, right next to Disneyland.
Exactly, located right next to Disney.
Superstar Limo has
It's
an
actually
exact...
Superstar Limo.
The picture of me in Superstar Limo, it looks exactly like you. You just can't believe it.
Really? It's kind of
It's like a photograph.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Now, this is not a scary fast ride, right?
No, no, no. This is just like a scenic, like as if you were new in Hollywood and you want to become a superstar to ride in.
Yeah.
Come on, my darling, let's take a ride.
Yeah. Say hi.
See you on the way back.
Say hi to me. Yeah, this is a real easy ride to go on.
Yeah? Okay.
Whoa.
Wow. There's Regis Philbin.
That's my
Oh, see?
Introducing vivacious Melanie Griffith and dashing Antonio Banderas.
Wow.
And there's Hollywood beauty Cindy Crawford.
Oh, Cindy.
Cindy Crawford.
All right.
Hey, there's Tim Allen.
You can tell
Hold
you're
your sides,
not
everyone. It's
impressed.
funny man Tim Allen. Come to Bel Air.
Look at that.
How about a map to your house, Drew Carey?
Isn't that Robert Zemeckis?
Hello, party. Hold your breath now.
Whoa!
We got a picture of him.
Come on.
Yeah,
Where the beautiful
Pretend we're
people
sleeping.
even
Pretend we're
more
sleeping.
beautiful.
Pretend you're sleeping for the picture.
Pretend you're sleeping.
Why, the always entertaining Cher. Movie.
Wow.
Hollywood favorite, Whoopi Goldberg.
Whoopee. All right, we're going to Sorrel, California.
You can tell they were not enthusiastic at all. My God. I thought the SeaWorld ride was lame. Like, how? How do people come up with this? How does this get past, like, the head honchos? This is terrible? I know.
There might be no better way to illustrate the reaction the public had to the ride than the on-ride photos. It is no surprise that the ride was received negatively, with guests complaining that they had waited a half hour to ride the cheap pop-up book. Superstar Limo was not the only issue. California Adventure as a whole was berated by the general public and critics alike.
But overall, the lines were so short at times out here.
I thought it was closed. This is outstanding.
The concept was bad, the execution was worse, and Superstar Limo was unforgivable. It is no surprise that on January 11th, 2002, less than a year after the park opened, Superstar Limo was closed. Management had no replacement in mind. They just realized that guests visiting California Adventure would be a lot happier if they never experienced the attraction. The building sat abandoned in the Hollywood Pictures backlot for 4 years. Rumors circulated of various redressings that the ride could undergo. Jim Hill reported that the Imagineers were considering retooling the ride into Goofy's Superstar Limo, where Goofy would drive guests through Hollywood, and the C-list celebrities would be replaced with classic animated Disney characters. To pull this off, Disney would take over 100 Disney figures that had been placed in Disney stores throughout the United States and move them into the new show scenes. Another idea was to reopen the ride as is, and over the course of a few months, introduce animatronics of the Muppets cast at various points in the ride. These characters would be wearing hard hats and be actively renovating Superstar Limo as guests rode through it. The Muppets would also be commenting on how horrible the current version of the ride was. The finished product after the transformation would be Miss Piggy's Superstar Limo. Of course, neither of these ideas happened, and the building continued to sit abandoned. It wouldn't be until after Eisner stepped down from CEO in 2005 that the Superstar Limo space would receive a new attraction. As the first step in what would become a $1.5 billion expansion and renovation to California Adventure, the new management team constructed the Pixar-themed dark ride, Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue. The simple dark ride would take guests throughout the events of the first Monsters Inc. film, and it was set to open on January 23, 2006. But that is not the end of Superstar Limo's story. Oh no, the ride very much lives on, in the absolute worst way possible. Since the Monsters Inc. dark ride was a quick fix for the park, coming a year before the major expansion, it didn't have the budget to bulldoze the space and start over. Quite the opposite, really. In order to save money, the Imagineers decided to utilize as much of Superstar Limo as possible. This included retrofitting the cutout exterior with door designs, which actually matched the film's intro animation, repurposing the limos into Monstropolis taxis, reusing the track layout and some of the tunnel sequences, and there was one more thing. Oh yeah, they stripped the C-list celebrity figures and dressed them into various animatronics throughout the ride. Some of these zombatronics are more obvious than others, and the Drew Carey and Jackie Chan figures are especially easy to spot. But don't worry, most, if not every figure in the ride was reused in some way. While the new ride has received mixed reviews, and its inclusion of the previous attraction's assets is unsettling to say the least, it is a far better dark ride than Superstar Limo. While Disney might wish they could erase Superstar Limo from the memories of the unfortunate park guests that experienced it, it is still important to remember the ride and the other missteps of California Adventure. The story is a good reminder that even a company as big as Disney can still get themselves into financial difficulty, creative gridlock, and even some pretty wacky situations. On the next Defunctland, Michael Eisner learns the differences between building a park in Tokyo and building a park in Paris.
God damn. You were going to say they can't feck up if they have the Muppets in it? Oh yeah, there was Action Park. You just missed it. Oh my god. I had no idea such lame rides existed, like the undersea the what was it, Submarine Quest and SeaWorld, Superstar Limo. Why? Oh Jesus. The Handwich? What the hell is this? Disney's failed sandwich of the future? Alright, alright. I never knew Disney was such a failure.
Zane was worried about dry mouth.
Back off. No ad time for you.
Sponsored by Raycon. Go to buyraycon.com/defunctland to save 15% today.
Not surprised there were lame rides. This is Disney we're talking about here. Disney. It's like they're supposed to be good at this. I mean, with all the hit movies and like Disneyland and World, you think they know what they're doing. Alright, here we go.
What's better than the smell of delicious food on a warm summer day? In this modern American kitchen is where we find our subject. This is Kevin. Kevin is a documentarian. A documentarian captures life and constructs stories about important topics such as injustice, crime, and roller coasters.
80s and 90s,
he does not show his
Coke.
face,
What
but
kind
he
of
will
Coke are you
show
talking
his
about?
hands. If we look closely at Kevin's hands, we can see that he is not just a documentarian, but he is also a baker. Like bed sheets from a roadside motel, Kevin's hands are splattered with the hauntings of years of mistakes. This mark was when Kevin burned his finger attempting to remove a hot tray of cookies from his oven. This mark is from when Kevin overreacted to burning his finger on the oven, dropped the hot tray of cookies, and instinctively went to catch the tray with his bare hand. Needless
Where is
to
this
say,
going?
Kevin has years of experience in the kitchen. And today, for the first time, he will combine his passions and embark on a historical culinary adventure. Today, Kevin is going to learn the history of and concoct his own sandwich.
Wait a sec, you read that wrong.
Sorry?
You read it wrong. Do it one more time.
Okay. Today, Kevin is going to learn the history of and concoct his own handwich. What is a handwich?
I'll show you.
The handwich in Odyssey.
Around 1986, a new food item debuted in Walt Disney World, named the Handwich. The Handwich was shaped like an ice cream cone, but instead of a waffle cone, it featured a cone-shaped sub-roll, and instead of ice cream, it had fillings. These included such delicacies as ham and cheese, pulled barbecue chicken, roast beef and cheddar, and even tuna salad. The Handwich was billed as the sandwich of the future. Because of this, the Handwich was sold at Epcot's The Land Pavilion's Farmers Market food court, as well as the Space Bar in Tomorrowland. It was also served in Adventureland at some point. Wherever it was billed as Disney's newest attraction, implying that you can ride the Handwich, when in reality the Handwich rides you. The official poster for the Handwich boasted that it was not just futuristic, but revolutionary. The, quote, first sandwich you can hold in one hand. The poster also stated that it was Disneylicious, and that those that consumed it were playing a part in the history of baking. Despite the heavy marketing effort, the Handwich was discontinued sometime in the mid-90s, leaving behind more questions than answers. Luckily, those questions would linger, and the good people at Retro WDW would respark interest in the Handwich during their Retro Magic event in 2019. Here, historian Brian Miles gave a keynote speech on the Handwich, which was coded somewhat like a military briefing.
Handwich?
Miles conducted an interview with former Imagineer Peggy Ferris, who had the inside scoop on the Handwich, and you'll never guess who was responsible for its creation.
Back at Imagineering, Michael Eisner challenged us to think about fun food. So that was the big idea.
In a surprising twist, Eisner pushed for fun food in part because when he was a young man, he visited the 1964 New York World's Fair, at which Disney famously contributed 4 groundbreaking attractions. While there, a young Eisner tried some of the fair's unique food offerings, including Belgian waffles. Over 2 decades later, Eisner was the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and he challenged the company's Imagineers to concoct a unique culinary creation for the Disney parks. During a day-long brainstorming session, Imagineers and food operations specialists designed dozens of dishes, but one stood out from the fray, a cone-shaped sandwich named the Castle Cone. The original fillings included Mushu shrimp and mixed berries. Eisner approved the idea, and the Castle Cone was born. However, the name was changed by the Walt Disney World marketing team, and it was officially released as the Handwich sometime around 1986, with more consumer and operations-friendly fillings.
Keith, I've been dying to know, what is a Handwich? It's a sub kind of roll so that you can stuff the meats inside and eat it actually like a cone.
As aforementioned, the Handwich was filled with ham and cheese, pulled barbecue chicken, roast beef and cheddar, and tuna salad. But these were just a few of the variations. There was also chicken salad, ambrosia salad, seafood salad, and taco beef. When Disney MGM Studios opened in 1989, a unique Handwich was created for the park with a Cobb salad filling. Unfortunately,
I'm
the
pretty
Handwich
sure
was not the
Eisner
success that
isn't
Eisner had hoped
CEO
for.
anymore.
In 1990, the Orlando Sentinel reported that, quote, the last we checked, the Handwich had not exactly gripped the imagination of a hungry America, let alone Orlando, let alone anyone but Michael Eisner. Retro WDW's Retro Magic event was held at the Ballroom of the Americas at the Contemporary Resort, and immediately after Brian's presentation, attendees were treated to a lunch of the future of the past with a Handwich buffet. This would not be the only reappearance of the Handwich after its discontinuation in the mid-90s. In 2012, Cars Land opened at Disney California Adventure theme park, and the Cozy Cone Motel quick service spot served Handwich-style bread cones, although they were not officially Handwiches. Flavors included chicken verde and chili cone queso, and for breakfast, bacon scramble. In 2013, Disney's Hollywood Studios Minnie Bill's Dockside Diner quick service stand served their own sandwich cones, but these were quickly discontinued. In 2014, another sandwich cone could be found, again at Disney's Hollywood Studios. This time, fillings included a macaroni and cheese with bacon topping cone and a Fiesta chili cheese cone. In 2017, during Epcot's 35th anniversary celebration, a retro Handwich was created, this time with a new mac and cheese with cheeseburger filling. While distinct from the original Handwich, this was the most intentional of the Handwich revivals, explicitly referencing the dish's predecessor. All of this is to say, the handwich is replicable, which means...
Kevin, wait! You're not really going to recreate one of the handwiches, are you?
No, announcer man. I'm going to recreate 3 of the handwiches.
3 handwiches? That is a journey from which you cannot return unsuccessful. Come up just 1 handwich short, and you will be lost to time, just like the handwich itself. Are you sure about this?
It'll be fine. Now let's make some handwiches.
Mouth-watering meals, delectable dishes, tasty treats. No matter how scrumptious, they, like everything, will be lost to time. But unlike most of us, some will be remembered. And unlike all of us, some will be resurrected. This is Defunctland, with the dishes of the past return to the plate. And now your host, Kevin Perjurer, will show us how to create an old-fashioned handwich.
It's true. The sandwich of the future of the past is of the present once again, because today we will be creating an old-fashioned barbecue chicken handwich. Let's start with our delicious slow-cooked barbecue chicken. First, we make our sauce with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
I wasn't expecting cooking to be in this video. Well, at least cooking on his
a 1/4 cup of brown
behalf.
sugar, and a tablespoon of olive oil. I have peeled and grated an onion, and we are going to put both the onion and the juice into our bowl. Finally, let's add 2 cups of barbecue sauce. The only barbecue sauce you will ever need, and the best barbecue sauce in the world, is Joe's Kansas City barbecue sauce. I'm going to add the whole bottle to our bowl.
The whole bottle?
Next, we place 3 pounds of chicken breast into our slow cooker. After we wash our hands, we season. This quick spice mix that I created contains salt, pepper, paprika, cayenne pepper, and garlic powder. We can now pour our sauce over our seasoned chicken, and once again we mix. Let's place the lid on our slow cooker and cook on low heat for 7 hours or high heat for 4 hours. About 2 hours before our chicken is done cooking, we can begin making our handwich cones. Start by warming up a cup of milk in the microwave until warm, but not hot. We can then add a teaspoon of sugar, then 7 ounces of active dry yeast, and yet again, we mix. We're going to allow our yeast to activate to the side for around 5 to 10 minutes. In the meantime, we will create our flour mixture. In this bowl, we have 4 cups of all-purpose flour.
Glad you're making
and we
dinner
are going
right
to
now.
add in 3 tablespoons of castor sugar and 2 teaspoons of salt, and then we mix. We're going to make a well in the center of our mixture. Inside, we will place 2 eggs and our activated yeast mixture. We can now take a hand mixer and we mix with a dough hook. After these are combined, we take a 4th cup of soft or slightly melted butter and add it to our dough. We now mix for around 6 to 7 minutes. We now place our somewhat sticky dough onto a floured surface to form it into a ball. Once we have done this, we can place it into a greased bowl, cover it completely, and allow it to sit in a slightly warm spot for 1 hour to rise. While that is rising, we can create our cone molds. We will be using printer paper and tinfoil to create these. These will be going in the oven, but do not worry, the paper will not catch fire. There's actually a great book about this which states the auto-ignition point of paper right in its title. It is called 1984. We will only be baking at 400 degrees, so we are well under this mark. First, we take 2 pieces of printer paper and we lay them landscape in front of us. We take the bottom left corner and create a small fold-in like this. That right there is about right. We can now use this fold to roll our cone, making sure to keep the point at the bottom as tight as possible. We continue to hold that together as we place a piece of tinfoil on our workspace. Start at one of the corners and wrap your cone in the tinfoil. Do not worry about this excess, because we are going to just fold that into the top of our cone. And there you have it. We will have
Landscape,
enough
you mean
dough
hot
for 8
dog way?
sandwiches, but I will only be baking 2. 1 for me and 1 for you. So once we have finished with our cone molds, we can place them to the side. Once our dough has risen, now comes the fun part. We're going to divide our dough into 8 equal pieces and cover again with our plastic to prevent any of them from drying out. One by one, we are going to take one of these pieces and roll it out. We want to end up with a long tube, around 3 feet long. Once we have this, we can take one of our molds and, starting from the bottom, spiral our dough up the cone. Now that's looking like a handwich. Once we have done this, we gently press our dough into the cone and pinch the tip. We now place these on a greased baking sheet. As our oven preheats to 400 degrees, we are going to give our handwich cones a light egg wash. Once our cones are prepared, we can place them in our oven for around 12 minutes. While those are cooking, our chicken should be just about done. That smells absolutely delicious. With 2 forks, we shred the chicken, and as we do this, we mix. We're going to drain only the chicken we will be filling, as we don't want our handwiches to be too soggy. Once we pull our cones out of the oven and allow them to cool, we can remove the mold and admire our work. Now, we take our chicken and fill our handwich cones. And voila, a beautiful barbecue chicken handwich. I must now take a bite. Absolutely wonderful. I could eat the whole thing, but I'm going to save my appetite because we have 2 more handwiches to make.
Kevin, wait! There's still time to turn back. Just 1 is enough. If anything goes wrong and you don't complete all 3, you could get stuck in historical limbo.
Nothing can stop me from making more handwiches. Onward.
What's cooking, America? Let's find out in Defunct Kitchen. And now, welcome your host, Kevin Perjurer.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Perjurer and I make defunct meals. Today we are going to be making something from long ago. It's an old Disney Parks favorite. You might have guessed it already. It is the handwich. This one is actually a viewer submission, so let's hear from Scott.
Hi, Kevin. I went to the Studio Catering Company at Disney MGM Studios in May 1989. Here, I tried the Cobb Salad Handwich for $3.60. It had a mix of finely chopped lettuce, egg, bacon, tomato, turkey, avocado, and blue cheese in a French roll cone. The blue cheese dominated just a bit, which didn't bother me. But if you don't like the pungent taste of Roquefort, you might not like this. I was wondering if you could show me how to make it.
Scott, thank you so much for writing in.
It's
the
like
handwich
those
is not only a
old
forgotten
shows.
food item, it is the perfect meal for many occasions. Let's say you have a daughter. She's a sweetheart, but she's a bit of an arsonist. Her principal is coming over to discuss her expulsion, and you have to cook something spectacular, or he will expel your daughter, and she will never be able to achieve the dreams that you've projected onto her. With these life-altering steaks, why not make a delicious handwich? And I'll show you how. We're going to start with 4 strips of bacon chopped up, and we're going to place these on a wire rack, and we're going to rest that on top of a drip pan lined with tinfoil. Once you have those on the wire rack, you can place it in a 400-degree oven for around 20 minutes, but make sure to watch it. After you've washed your hands, we can open our dough. Now I'm going to take advantage of the store for this one. This is French bread dough, and we're just going to give it a little karate chop, hi-ya. And now we're just going to open it up, and we're going to split it in half, just like that, into 2 equal parts for our 2 handwich cones. Now we're going to wrap these around one of these cones. Now what this is, it's just printer paper wrapped in tinfoil. Now we have a tutorial on our website, and you can just go to that link right there. And once you made 2 of these, we can
Is there
get
actually
rolling.
a...
So let's grab one of our dough, and just like we're starting a campfire, we just go to town. We want to make this around 3 feet long. And once we've done that, you can take your tinfoil cone, and you just wrap it around the very tip, and then you spiral it on. You just keep wrapping all the way. Take our greased baking sheet, and we put our hand.
We've seen this before.
And once we've got that, we can put that one on right next to it, cooking just right under there. Now, while we got that cooking, I want to tell you about an incredible product. These are the Raycon Everyday E25 earbuds,
sponsor bit.
and they're today's sponsor. These
Go buy
earbuds are the
Raycon.
real deal.
There you go.
The Bluetooth, it's incredible to work, to exercise in the kitchen because of music and my cooking. I can even dance with these while baking and they don't fall out. And the bass on these things is great. Comfortably slide right into my pocket. Raycon.com, % off your order. Defunctland to save 50. I got stuff in the oven. I gotta get bacon. It is beautiful and ready for our salad. Give me some for the bacon. Oh yeah. We're now gonna make our dressing. We're gonna start with a 1/3 cup of red wine vinegar, and then we're gonna add 2/3 of extra virgin olive oil, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and of course, salt and pepper. Close that up, and now we mix.
Jesus.
God, I'm tired. Okay, so we're gonna take our lettuce and put it into a salad spinner, and you will never guess what that does, but I bet you'll clap anyways. Forte, Kevin's got a headache. Let's go ahead and speed run this salad. Bacon, cherry tomatoes, Roquefort, egg. Doesn't matter how you slice it, it'll still taste terrible. I'm gonna open up an avocado and take out its pit. Boom, magic, it disappeared. No idea where that went. Slice up some turkey I got from the deli. And don't forget to throw a little piece of turkey over your shoulder for good luck. And we mix. And look what just came out of the oven. One of them's a little messed up, but that doesn't matter.
Over
We're
your
gonna
shoulder
keep on
for good
trucking.
luck.
Let's go ahead and add our dressing to our salad and
Wait.
then fill the...
Wait, isn't it salt? Yes, that's it. That's what I was thinking. You throw a bit of salt over your left shoulder for, like, to banish demons or something.
These cones. Now I cannot wait to try this, so I'm not gonna. Let's take a bite. That is delicious. That's 2 beautiful handwich cones, and you know what this pairs great with? Raycon Everyday E25
God damn
earbuds.
it.
I know can smell fear, and if they smell it, TV minutes, which is roughly 13 hours. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Now I've got to go make another handwich, or I might be lost. That's not good.
I chose Wix for my business because of its...
Back off, back off. No ad time for you.
Ow. Oh. Where am I? Mr. Announcer Man? Hello? Studio audience? Anyone? Here we go. What? Wait a sec.
Where is he going with this?
I know what this is. Limbo. I've got to make that third handwich. I've got to find a kitchen. Fridge, yes! Empty, no! I cannot be stuck here forever. There's got to be something around here somewhere. Come on! Oh no. Wait. Keys. I've got it. Just one more. That's all I need.
I told you, Kevin. You must create all 3, or you will be lost to time.
I will, Announcer Man.
What's with this elaborate bit just for the handwich?
was meant to die. Let it stay dead.
I have to bring it back once more.
3 handwiches? That's impossible. You'll never do it.
I guess everyone was right when they called you two-handwich Kevin.
I never believed in you.
I'm gonna prove you all wrong. I just need one more handwich.
Kevin, take my hand. Take my handwich.
Biscuits? I'm so glad!
Thank you for choosing Arby's. Place your order when ready.
Could I get 3 beef and cheddar sandwiches without the buns?
So if you don't want it on the bun, you just put it in a bowl.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 beef and cheddar classics all in the same bowl with the cheese and the sauce in the bowl as well.
That's right. And some mozzarella sticks, please.
Sure, you want 4 or 6?
6.
Where is he going with this?
Handwich. What is a handwich?
What is a handwich?
Oh my god. He's just stuffing like this Arby's Arby's sandwich filling into this into this cut baguette.
Believe it or not, that was the best one.
Kevin, you did it! You made all 3 handwiches! You can come back now. Kevin? Kevin? Kevin!
Oh, looks like he died making that last handwich. Defunctland videos. You'll never guess who was responsible for this insane, batshit bizarre thing at Disney that got made in the late 80s, early 90s that everyone hated. Was it Michael Eisner? It was Michael Eisner. Holy shit. You'll never guess who was responsible for its creation. No, not again. It's not possible. It was Michael Eisner. Oh, the comments. Oh my god. Oh, what else is there? What other failures did Disney have? I imagine quite a few. You know what? The failure of Disney's Chuck E. Cheese ripoff. Let's go. Let's go.
At Merrick?
Nope. Sorry, doggo. You don't get ad time. The failure of Disney's Chuck E. Cheese ripoff. Club Disney. Oh, here we go.
And the Walt Disney Company was in a very peculiar place. Walt Disney Studios was riding high, as they were in the middle of the Disney Renaissance. A return to form had yielded a plethora of box office success, while the rest of the company appeared to be in a state of disarray. Jeffrey Katzenberg, the president of Walt Disney Studios, was forced to resign by CEO Michael Eisner in 1994. This was because Katzenberg had demanded that
Damn it. It's not even 30 seconds in, and immediately... It's not even 30 seconds in, and immediately, Michael Eisner. You hear his name. Star Wars Acolyte and the sequel movie failed are terrible. Yeah. I haven't seen much of the recent Star Wars stuff. I think the only thing I've... Oh, wait, no. I haven't seen, like, some of the shows. I've seen the sequel trilogy. The only one I really liked was, what was it? Force Awakens. That was the only one I liked of the trilogy. And then I saw, what was it? Solo Star Wars story or something, and Rogue One. Rogue One was good. I liked Rogue One. I don't know if you saw that one, but yeah, I think Rogue One was good. Plus it had... Oh, what was his name? Donnie Yen. I think that was his name. The blind guy. Hang on. Wait, just go back a few seconds.
Disarray. Jeffrey Katzenberg, the president of Walt Disney Studios, was forced to resign by CEO Michael Eisner in 1994.
Forced to resign?
This was because Katzenberg had demanded that...
By sequels, episodes 7 through 9. I personally, I think Force Awakens was alright. I mean, it didn't really feel like anything groundbreaking. I mean, it kind of felt like episode 4, but remastered, in a sense. It kind of brought back all the things you kind of loved about it. But yeah, it's kind of like episode 4 remastered, kind of. Well, modern CG and everything. Who was CEO of Disney at this time? Eisner didn't make a comeback, did he?
Eisner appoint him to president after the death of Frank Wells had left the position vacant. Many prominent Disney shareholders and board members did not want Katzenberg as the president of the company, and Eisner, who saw Katzenberg as hungry for power and acclaim, did not feel comfortable promoting him. After he left, Katzenberg would form rival animation studio DreamWorks SKG and would sue Disney for promised royalties that he had never received. The lawsuit would be settled a year later in 1997. with reports saying that Disney paid Katzenberg almost $270 million. In 1995, Eisner had appointed Michael Ovitz, the founder of the world-renowned creative arts agency, to the position of president. For a variety of reasons, this did not work out. Eisner would dismiss him from the company just over a year later in 1996. Ovitz would walk away with a severance package of nearly $140 million. During all of this, Eisner himself would cash in stock options of nearly $600 million. Money was flying all over the place at the Walt Disney Company, but none of it was going to the company's other major division. Disney Parks had gone on a roller coaster of its own during the preceding 5 years, and Eisner's proclaimed Disney decade was not going as planned. Many ambitious and creative projects were scrapped by the mid-90s. Disney's America was announced, and then canceled. Disneyland's elaborate Tomorrowland renovation, Tomorrowland 2055, was announced and then canceled. Disneyland's second gate, Port Disney, was announced and then canceled. Disneyland's other second gate, Westcott, was announced and then canceled. Epcot's New World Showcase pavilions and renovated Future World pavilions were announced and then canceled. A bunch of Indiana Jones attractions, a bunch of Muppets attractions, and a bunch of Toontown attractions all were announced and then canceled because of one bad egg. Euro Disney. The resort just outside of Paris, France had gone way...
For a second there, I thought he was gonna say Michael Eisner. Because of one bad egg. Michael Eisner, no. Euro Disney, really? I was fully expecting him to say Michael Eisner just then.
way over budget and failed spectacularly, causing a domino effect throughout the company. Euro Disney was not the sole reason that all of these projects were canceled. For some, there were many other causes. But the failure was always part of the decision, and more often than not, it was the deciding factor. Whether for financial reasons or personal hesitation, Eisner slammed the brakes on the Disney decade, but he still felt pressure to capitalize on the strong brand that the studios had created. Plus, the United States was experiencing an economic boom during this time, allowing families more leisure spending. All signs were pointing Eisner to an expansion of the parks, but Euro Disney, Disney's America, and the other failures were still on his mind. This led him to what seemed to be a brilliant compromise. In 1996, Eisner created a new subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company named Disney Regional Entertainment. This division would plan and execute Disney entertainment venues throughout the United States. With this, the company would be able to profit off of its successful properties in an interactive setting similar to the company's parks in Anaheim and Orlando. However, what Eisner was planning was no Disneyland. He had something much cheaper in mind, and something much more 90s.
Cheaper and 90s? Oh boy. Oh right, this is the Chuck E. Cheese ripoff.
In the early 90s, things were going good. Disney was making money as every company should. Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast hit so big they wanted to
oh my god, this intro.
They tried to expand, but Euro Disneyland fell real hard. It did not go as planned. They were out of money, they were out of luck, but Eisner had an idea to pick the company back up. Moving to the malls, ruin the brand, cancel all your plans. It's Defunctland, cashing all your stock as quick as you can. Close some more rides, it's Defunctland.
Oh god,
Defunctland is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
The 1990s, the Wild West of themed entertainment. Apart from the recent developments of the theme park industry, local entertainment was booming throughout the United States. Shopping centers that had existed for decades were being transformed into miniature amusement parks, with niche stores and small attractions taking over. Themed restaurant chains were sprouting up all over the country, with the usual suspects being Rainforest Cafe, the Hard Rock Cafe, and Planet Hollywood. The most unexpected of the new developments might have been the rise in indoor children's play places. These were a mix of tubes, slides, ball pits, nets, stairs with steps taller than your body, socks with holes in them, vomit, disinfectant, those net bridges that your feet would get stuck in, a kind of terrifying helicopter thing where the mean kids would jump up and down and it would shake a lot. The open slides with only like one hill, which was just a waste. I mean, I climbed all the way up there. I'm gonna take the tube slide. And rug burns. So many rug burns. McDonald's opened its first indoor play place of this kind in 1987. This allowed parents to dine while their children played, and the concept was met with glowing reviews. McDonald's would continue to add play places to their restaurants, and others would quickly take note and expand upon the idea.
Running swing here. I don't
What is this
Slide
ad?
here? I don't think so. Then where? I'm going DZ at Discovery Zone, where I can cut loose and be on my own.
DZ is made just for me, the place where I can really cut loose. It's all here.
Jump and tumble here? I don't think so. I'm going DZ, where kids wanna be.
Discovery Zone opened its first location in Kansas City, Missouri in 1989. The facility featured an elaborate play place, a ball pit, a rock wall, an arcade, a maze, and a variety of other activities for children. Discovery Zone was a popular venue for birthday parties and group day trips. It also advertised itself as a good place for kids to engage in fun fitness activities. The company would quickly expand, opening 39 more locations until being purchased in 1992 by wealthy Chicago businessman Donald Flynn. In less than 3 years, the chain would expand to 340 locations.
Damn.
McDonald's had noticed the competition, and in 1991 had created their own chain of indoor amusement centers named Leaps and Bounds. McDonald's would not be able to keep up with Discovery Zone, and would sell all 48 Leaps and Bounds locations to the company in 1994. Around this time, Blockbuster Video, who owned about 20% of Discovery Zone, would up its stake to 50.1% and would assume control of the company in 1995. In hindsight, this was akin to Radio Shack investing in Toys R Us. What, too soon? The rapid expansion of Discovery Zone would prove unsustainable, and the company wouldn't make it to the 21st century. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 1996, and would do the same in 1999, this time ceasing operations. Over 100 locations closed immediately. This brought a flood of horror stories of children showing up to the center for their birthday party, only to be greeted by a note on the door informing them of the closure. Some of the franchised locations remained open, and 13 fun centers, along with the Discovery Zone name and logo, were purchased by the company's main competitor, a powerful rat named Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Smile, America, say Chuck E. Cheese. Smile, America, say Chuck E. Cheese. Food and games and all kinds of features. For a taste of pizza time theater, you can smile, America. Smile, America. Smile, America, say Chuck E. Cheese.
Started by Atari founder Nolan Bushnell, Chuck E. Cheese's opened its first location in San Jose, California in 1977. Bushnell had always had a respect for the Walt Disney Company and their theme parks, and he wanted to create an elaborate entertainment experience of his own. He would combine video games, animatronics, and pizza into a restaurant called Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater. Bushnell would expand this restaurant into a chain, and by 1984, the company had over 250 locations. Unfortunately, this same year, Pizza Time Theater would declare bankruptcy due to debts acquired through expansion, the declining interest in arcades, and in some cases, multiple restaurants that were located too close to each other, virtually splitting the potential profit of an area. The remaining locations would be quickly bought by rival chain Showbiz Pizza Place, which was started by a Chuck E. Cheese franchisee in 1980. Showbiz Pizza did not rebrand any of the Chuck E. Cheese restaurants, and the two chains would eventually be merged in 1990, with Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated choosing to go all in on the Chuck E. Cheese brand, abandoning Showbiz Pizza's animatronic band, the Rockafire Explosion, in the process. Throughout all of the financial issues and restructurings, there were still over 250 operating locations in 1992, with all of them being renamed to Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza before dropping the pizza from its title in 1995. On top of their arcades, animatronic shows, and pizza, Chuck E. Cheese's began investing more in indoor play places to compete with McDonald's and Discovery Zone. It was around this time that the Walt Disney Company took note of the success of these companies. While they might have been late to the game, they expected to fit right in. After all, Discovery Zone had been described as an indoor Disney World, and Chuck E. Cheese's used Disney as a major inspiration during its development. If Disney utilized the same concept, implementing their attention to detail and intellectual properties, they could dominate the new market.
Oh man, oh god damn it. Good thing I paused right then.
Proven quality.
Let me tell you though, Chuck E. Cheese, that place was great. Oh.
Eisner.
Oh god, more about Eisner. I remember going to Chuck E. Cheese a bunch of times when I was a kid. Oddly enough, we never ate the pizza there. We just went there for the games and like the plays. But yeah, that was fun. Ah, the memories. Oh god, I'm old. Time is catching up to me.
Appointed Art Levitt to the president of Disney Regional Entertainment. Levitt was the perfect person for the job, and it wasn't the first time that he and Eisner had done business. At 28, he was a salesman at a Los Angeles furniture store. One day, Michael Eisner himself walked in looking to purchase some items for Disney. The fact that the CEO of one of the world's largest corporations was concerned with something as small as furniture was a true testament to Eisner's micromanagement. Levitt and Eisner apparently hit it off, and he was quickly named Director of Corporate Projects and Executive Assistant to Eisner. During his first tenure with Disney, he would also become an executive in charge of overseeing Walt Disney World's on-property resort and entertainment locations, including the Disney Village Marketplace and its Pleasure Island nightclub district. Levitt came up with the idea for an ESPN-themed restaurant to be placed on Pleasure Island. In 1993, Levitt left Disney to head Rank Leisure USA, a company that operated multiple Hard Rock Cafe locations. Just 2 years later, he would return to Disney, equipped with new expertise on location-based themed entertainment. After becoming the president of Disney Regional Entertainment, he would head the creation of 3 national chains for the Walt Disney Company. The first was their attempt at a children's indoor amusement center to be named Club Disney. Club Disney is a now little-known project of the Walt Disney Company. Disney intended to build the amusement centers in suburban malls throughout the country. The spaces were designed for weekend visits, school field trips, and birthday parties. It would also house family workshops, such as Poo Aerobics, which was described as a 10-week parent and child stretching and exercise program led by the beloved and befuddled Honey Bear. The complexes featured play places, educational demonstrations, animation tutorials, karaoke, and kid-friendly computer games in a lab called the Mousepad. The e-ticket attraction of Club Disney was of course the play place. These varied from location to location, with some being themed to a specific franchise, such as The Lion King or Hercules, while others were not themed at all. The play places had varying names, such as the Jungle Climber, the Color-Rageous Climber, and the Supercalitoontastic Whatchamaclimate Time Toaster. Other attractions were a room themed to Peter Pan where guests could see their shadow, a swing themed to Tarzan, an activities area called Herc's Gym, motion-detected musical instruments on the Aristocat Music Wall, which sounds very similar to an attraction that used to be in Epcot's ImageWorks, an area for children under 3 called the Pooh and You Corner, a storybook time, and a variety of arcade games. At some locations, there was a Little Mermaid-themed area, where kids could, quote, peek through the portholes of a sunken pirate ship and find a treasure, or chat with a friend on a cellular telephone. There would also be periodic dance parties themed to different Disney properties. These included the Lion King Limbo, the Mickey Macarena, and the Roger Rabbit Bunny Hop. Some locations had a room called the Applaudville Theater, where guests could dress as Disney characters and participate in a fashion show. There were also educational activities called Ed Ventures, and monthly activities, such as science demonstrations themed to Flubber. As with Chuck E. Cheese and Discovery Zone, a major focus of Club Disney was its elaborate birthday parties, with children getting to pick from a few options, such as Disney Princess Tea, Toy Story Search Party, Pooh-rific, Hercules Hero Hurrah, and 101 Dalmatians Bow Wow Bash. Some locations had a magician performing tricks as Merlin, and the cake for the parties was catered by the Cheesecake Factory. A child could only enter Club Disney with an adult, and both were given a special wristband with a barcode, so no child could leave with a different adult than the one they came with. This was to ease the minds of parents, to allow the kids to roam free within the complex, and to ensure that no parents treated Club Disney as a daycare center. The clubs also served Mickey Mouse-shaped pizza. Admission was $8 for kids and $4 for adults, which would be about $12 and $6 respectively when adjusted for inflation. There was also a large gift store called the Clubhouse Shop. One mother reacted to Club Disney's announcement by proclaiming, "Disney has invaded our lives, but I think the children enjoy all of it." The opening day of the first location, which was part of a new mall in Thousand Oaks, California, began with a ceremony featuring Michael Eisner, Mickey Mouse, and Goofy. The head of attendance calculating at the Walt Disney Company estimated that over 10,000 visitors would show up on opening day. And surprise, he was a little off. When Club Disney opened its doors on February 21st, 1997, only 1,000 visitors showed, proving that no one had learned anything from Euro Disneyland's opening. One sheriff was quoted saying, "We were expecting a lot more people. Maybe because Disney advertised that tens of thousands were going to be here, it scared people away." Of the opening day crowd, 10 or so were protesters accusing Disney of paying Haitian workers 28 cents an hour to make Pocahontas-themed pajamas. The demonstrators were probably also disappointed that more people did not show up. Still, parents and children seemed to love the new complex.
The protesters were also disappointed that more people didn't show up. Oh man. Oh, that's hilarious. This guy and his jokes. Uh,
And 4 more would be built. Another in California, 2 in Arizona, and 1 in Colorado. Disney representatives had been enthusiastic of the chain's success, claiming that they were going to open another 100 clubs, quote, as fast as we can build them. While reviews were positive,
That's
Club
being a
Disney
bit
was not without
cocky.
its critics. One of the higher-end malls that Club Disney had moved into accused Disney of ignoring the complex's theming standards by implementing their cheesy design. Also, parents complained about the price of admission, especially the necessity for a separate adult ticket, as they were not participating in the club's activities and were required to be there. Club Disney also proved that Disney was best off not teaching anything ever, as the Ed Ventures activities were the most highly criticized of the complex, with many accusing them of being a mere tactic to convince schools to sign off on field trips. In the end, Disney did not follow through with the plans for expansion, but not for these small complaints. The company was impatient with the investment, and less than 3 years after the opening of the first location, Disney decided to cancel the expansion and shut down the complexes. Club Disney was not the cash cow that the company had hoped for, and being the late 90s, Eisner was not in the mood to play the long game. The company was cutting costs across the board, and Club Disney became another casualty of the financial issues. The chain was closed on November 1st, 1999, having never expanded past its original 5 locations. This was around the same time that Discovery Zone ceased its operations, leading many to believe that indoor play centers were just a fad of the 90s. As Chuck E. Cheese's would prove, there is some longevity to the concept, so long as you innovate or evolve. As for Disney Regional Entertainment, Club Disney would be the smallest of their 3 projects. Another regional chain Levitt would create was based off his original idea for an ESPN-themed restaurant, now possible thanks to Disney's 1996 acquisition of ABC.
It's your mother. Hi.
Hi. How are you guys holding up without me?
Oh, we're okay. We were just watching a little TV.
Have the kids driven you nuts yet?
We've been keeping ourselves entertained.
Jess said she'd help you with the dishes tonight.
Well, the kitchen is spotless and dinner was great.
Wow, you should reward yourselves. Take them somewhere fun. That will have a huge impact on the league.
The complexes were part bar, part restaurant, part arcade, part gift shop, and part broadcast studio. It was such a hit among sports fans that there were apparently points where guests would have to be dragged out for staying an excessive amount of time. The ESPN Zone would also put on the Ultimate Couch Potato Competition, a sitting competition that challenged participants to watch TV without falling asleep or getting up, only allowing a bathroom break every 8 hours. One year, the winner watched TV for 3 straight days. ESPN Zone would debut in Baltimore on July 11th, 1998. The brand would grow to a total of 9 locations, many of which would close in the mid to late 2000s, mostly due to the recession, and the only remaining location, at Downtown Disney in Anaheim, closed June 2, 2018 to make room for the Disneyland Resort's new hotel. In between Club Disney and ESPN Zone would be Disney Regional Entertainment's most ambitious project. It was the main reason that the subsidiary had been created. It was the Imagineers' most puzzling concoction. It was Disney Quest.
Disney Quest? Hang on. Wow, I had no idea Disney had so many failures. Also, I need to see, like, is Chuck E. Cheese? How many locations? Chuck E. Cheese. Wikipedia. Restaurant chain, Atari co-founder, headquartered in Texas. Number of locations. They still have 500 locations. Wait, Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, South America. What? History. COVID-19, financially damaging, $1 to $2 billion in debt. Oh, 200 million in loans to finance a restructuring. Voluntary petition, Chapter 11. The owners of Chuck E. Cheese, Peter Piper Pizza chains emerged from bankruptcy. Selling of its lenders led by... Okay, so, for the time being, they are still around. For the time being, Chuck E. Cheese is still going to be here. With 500 locations still. Damn. Okay, what was that we watched? Club Disney. Disney Quest. Okay, that was the one they were talking at. They hinted at.
Flex alert! Flex alert!
No ad time.
1995, the video game developer Sega announced plans for a new ambitious project. Their goal was to create location-based themed entertainment centers, a hybrid of amusement parks and arcades, and place them throughout the United States. The concept was simple enough. Instead of putting arcades into malls, they wanted to put malls into arcades. In order to do this, they would create state-of-the-art games and attractions, and insert them into complexes complete with small shops and food courts. Sega had tested the idea in Japan in the mid-80s and reactions had been positive. The industry seemed promising in the United States as well, with chains such as Dave & Buster's finding success with a similar concept. Sega had the resources
I've never
to
been to
physically
a Dave
build
&
the indoor
Buster's.
amusement
I don't even
centers,
know if
but
there
it
are
couldn't
any
hurt to
around
partner
where
with
I
a company
live.
that could drive the project creatively. They would find a partner in a familiar entertainment company that starts with a D. That's right, DreamWorks. Sega and DreamWorks announced their partnership to create a chain of indoor amusement centers named GameWorks, with filmmaker Steven Spielberg providing significant creative input. GameWorks would grow over the next 2 decades, opening over 30 locations both in the United States and around the world. The chain sounds a lot like another venture attempted by an even larger creative force. The Walt Disney Company and its subsidiary, Disney Regional Entertainment, would develop an indoor entertainment center for families named Disney Quest that would debut in 1998. However, Disney Regional Entertainment was not even created until over a year after the GameWorks announcement. So did Disney copy the idea? It's certainly not the first time they've mimicked concepts under the helm of CEO Michael Eisner. The question is, why? Out of all of the entertainment concepts sprouting up in the 90s,
Eisner, his name
why
always
GameWorks?
comes up.
Most of the locations and attractions that Eisner imitated posed a direct threat to the amount of tourists that would be visiting Disney's parks. But GameWorks wasn't stealing any business from Disney. The locations hadn't even been announced. So why expand into an emerging, volatile market and take on a company that has more experience and resources in that field? That risk does not seem to make sense from a business perspective, but it makes perfect sense if you look at it from a completely different angle. Who founded GameWorks? Sega and DreamWorks. Who founded DreamWorks? Steven Spielberg, David Geffen, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, the former head of Walt Disney Studios that had constantly butted heads with Eisner and had been ousted from the company a year prior. Disney Regional Entertainment was in part created as an easy way to expand the Disney Parks experience to smaller cities throughout the United States, but there was something bigger going on here. Eisner was spiraling, and he was taking the Walt Disney Company down with him.
Why did they never... Wait, hang on. How did he finally get kicked out of office? I gotta look that up. Basically, an adult Chuck E. Cheese's minus the pizza is pretty fun. I'll have to take your word for it. I've never even seen one. Michael Eisner. Wikipedia. Former 1984 to 2005? Why did they keep him up? Why did they keep him for so long? Surely someone had the power to boot him. Final years at Disney were tumultuous. Box office bombs, public feuds with Katzenberg, and Steve Jobs. Save Disney campaign organized by Roy E. Disney. Oh, okay. The nephew of Walt Disney. Lost the confidence of board of directors. Pressure from the campaign. Thank you, Roy Disney, for kicking out Eisner. Stepped down as CEO prematurely. Wait. Bob Iger? Iger? Eager? Tide. Iger. Yeah, Iger. President of CEO up until 2020. Hang on. Who's currently the CEO? Wait, is he back as CEO? Wait, what? It says CEO, Bob Iger. Oh, here we go. At the request of the board of directors, returned to Disney as CEO in 2022. Unscheduled immediate dismissal of his successor, Bob Chapek. Disney renewed his contract until 2026? Okay, so I guess he's doing better. Michael Eisner, Mickey Mouse, Kevin Berger. They make all these intros himself. I mean,
Mars.
props
Take a
to
trek
him.
through a prehistoric jungle. Tour a house that has not yet been built. It's called virtual reality, and as Jay Schaefer found out, all it takes is a special helmet and a glove, and you're off.
You're gone, John. Your history.
It's a computer-generated world where you see and move and feel. Will real life ever be the same?
Though it had been implemented into specialized use for fields such as medicine and engineering since the 1970s, virtual reality technology wasn't seen as ready for consumers until the 1990s. One of the first commercial uses of the technology would be the insertion of virtual reality pods into arcades, malls, and movie theaters. These had horrible graphics, constrained movement, high costs, and generalized filth. The system in one game could easily cost around $50,000 to purchase, and generally cost the consumer around $5 to play, which would be closer to $100,000 to purchase and $10 to play when a...
To think, like, today, you can go buy your own VR goggles and, like, play VR chat for a lot less.
Adjusted for inflation. With the high costs involved, VR cafes began to open across the country, allowing patrons to try out the latest in VR technology. While excitement around VR remained, the boom of VR arcade games tapered off by the mid-90s. By then, the idea of VR had caught the attention of video game console producers, such as Sega and Nintendo, both of which attempted to create VR headsets for home use, both meeting less than ideal results. By the late 90s, the future of the medium was bleak, but GameWorks, and therefore Disney, saw potential, and virtual reality games and simulators would be the main attractions of both of the planned complexes. On June 20th, 1995, Disney announced that the Walt Disney World Resort Shopping District, the Disney Village Marketplace, would receive a major renovation. In September of 1997, it would be renamed to Downtown Disney. In its 20-year existence, the marketplace had already undergone a few major expansions. The most notable of these was the addition of Pleasure Island, an elaborate-themed nightclub district that debuted in 1989. This divided the complex in two, with the other section being named the Marketplace. These two sections saw their theming slightly adjusted in order to fit the Downtown Disney renovation, and a new area, named Downtown Disney West Side, opened as well. This new section would include a Cirque du Soleil show, a Planet Hollywood, and a ginormous indoor theme park. Disney Quest opened its doors on June 19, 1998. There was little build-up to its debut, and the structure was nearly finished a year prior to its opening, with Disney refusing to confirm or release any information, not even announcing its official name until a few months before. The public and the press were confused on what exactly would be inside of the large building when it opened, and Disney Regional Entertainment seemed the most confused of all. The subsidiary's president, Art Levitt, acknowledged that the team was having a difficult time describing Disney Quest, It was more than an arcade, but it wasn't really a theme park either. When questioned in the months leading up to its opening, Levitt and other executives referred to the complex as the ultimate interactive adventure, which means almost nothing if you think about it. Disney provided a few press releases and promotional material, but overall, the debut of Disney Regional Entertainment's flagship concept was surprisingly quiet. Still, in the summer of 1998, a large crowd gathered to enter Disney Quest for the first time, not sure what to expect from the new experience.
Not sure what to expect, huh?
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner. I'm here in the virtual reality
boy.
studio where Disney Imagineers are creating a whole new world of storytelling. Tiny TV screens inside this headset actually allow you to step into the world of Aladdin on a magic carpet ride. It's called virtual because it's a world which only exists inside a computer. Reality because unlike film or television, you see not just what's on the screen, but what's above, around, and behind you. And you control when you return to the real world. I wonder where the exit is. Oh well, welcome to the wonderful world of Disney.
The building was a huge 5-story, 100,000 square foot blue box. On the front and back of the building, there was a large set of Mickey ears with Disney Quest in large print. The building had no windows, adding to the mystery surrounding its contents. Concept art for the complex gave the building a slightly different, more three-dimensional style, also incorporating a proposed monorail track to the downtown Disney complex. Exterior ticket booths were located to the left of the entrance. Guests would enter on the ground floor, a simple yet elegant lobby. There were bronze busts of famous Disney characters placed throughout the room. The centerpiece was an artificial sky, with supercalifragilisticexpialidocious surrounding the trim of the faux window. This was the setup to the illusion that the elevators were actually flying you to a new land. It was a subtle and fun touch. At the end of the lobby were the turnstiles to get on the elevator. Once through, guests boarded the highly themed lifts, named the Cyberlators. These featured an en-route show, starring the genie from Aladdin. This 45-second video explains to guests that they are being transported not just to the next level, but to a new location entirely. After this, the elevator doors opened, and guests entered Disney Quest. Like the classic castle parks around the world, Disney Quest was designed with a central hub, known as Ventureport. Upon entering the main area, guests could see a structure that appeared to be a futuristic telescope. Connected to Ventureport were 4 bridges, known as gateway branches, leading out to each themed zone. These were Replay Zone, Score Zone, Create Zone, and Explore Zone. The Replay Zone, located on floors 3, 4, and 5, featured Midway on the Moon, a classic arcade where guests could play games like Pac-Man, Air Hockey, Skee-Ball, and Tron. An attraction called Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters also resided in this area. This was much different than the Buzz Lightyear dark rides that can be found at Disney parks throughout the world. Disney Quest version was an attraction that combined bumper cars with dodgeball. Each vehicle contained 2 guests. One would drive the car, and the other would fire dodgeballs at the other vehicles. The next zone was Score Zone, also located on floors 3, 4, and 5. The main game in this area was the Mighty Ducks Pinball Slam. Guests would stand on platforms and lean in different directions, controlling a virtual pinball on a large screen. Another game in the Score Zone was one of Disney Quest's premier VR attractions, Ride the Comics. Guests would don large visors and hold motion-detecting sabers, swinging them violently as they fought villains in a digital superhero world. There were multiple bays, made to look like spaceships. The last attraction in the Score Zone was Invasion, an extraterrestrial alien encounter. In extension to the Magic Kingdom attraction that had opened 3 years prior, Invasion continued the world building that extraterrestrial alien encounter began. In the game's story, a space outpost filled with American colonists is being invaded by alien monsters. In a moment of desperation, the President of the United States enlists the help of L.C. Clench, the chairman of XS Tech, played once again by Jeffrey Jones. In a pre-show video, Clench describes his new military technology, the XS 5000, that requires a pilot and multiple gunmen to operate. After the pre-show, players would enter the XS 5000 and be teleported to the planet. Operating 2 joysticks, the gunmen had the ability to shoot lasers or missiles, as well as capture colonists. The pilot would navigate the ship around and eventually back to the teleporter, and also trigger the ship to jump to get out of tough situations. The immersive experience used 3D graphics and a variety of multi-angled screens. During the 4-minute game, players would run into some familiar-looking monsters, with grotesque designs similar to those found in the Magic Kingdom attraction. The third themed zone was the Create Zone, located on the 2nd floor.
Okay, so far it doesn't seem bad. Like the VR like games and stuff, that ride just now, the interactive like arcade ride, like it seems it seems fine. Like, I don't see anything wrong with it so far. Like, it's just an arcade place. Like, a very themed arcade place.
This area featured the Animation Academy, an interactive demonstration similar to those found at other Disney parks, in that participants were given a tutorial on how to draw Disney's animated characters. One difference was that Disney Quest's version utilized digital touchscreens, while the others used paper. Due to this difference, the Disney Quest attraction was only able to accommodate 18 guests at a time. Other attractions in the Create Zone included Radio Disney Songmaker, which allowed guests to create their own original song by mixing different styles, sounds, effects, lyrics, and more. Sid's Create-A-Toy, a Toy Story-inspired area that let guests combine different toy parts to create a new one, and Magic Mirrors, which allowed guests to take a picture of themselves and manipulate it into a cartoon. The most popular attraction in the Create Zone was Cyberspace Mountain. Cyberspace Mountain was a simulator ride in which guests could design their own roller coaster. It began with a tutorial presented by Bill Nye the Science Guy, explaining to riders how to properly construct their coaster. Cyberspace Mountain allowed guests to ride their creations in a simulator car capable of tilting, turning, and even flipping them upside down. A more advanced version of this concept would later appear in Disney parks as the Sum of All Thrills, a 2009 addition to Innoventions in Epcot. The last zone was the Explore Zone.
Okay, yo, that's actually kind of cool. Like, you build your own coaster, then you get in a simulator that, like, simulates all the motion? Yo, alright, alright. It's kind of like if you combine the Planet Coaster coaster building thing with, like, one of these simulators. Oh god, I'm just imagining some of the coasters people building Planet Coaster and how it probably would kill you.
Located on floors 1 and 2. Guests could get to the area either by the stairs or from the third floor Aladdin-themed Cave of Wonders slide. However, this was closed after less than a year of operation. The Explore Zone had 3 large attractions that were technological marvels for their time. The first attraction was Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride. This attraction was another VR game that required a headset. Guests would sit on a motorcycle-like seat, and after putting on the headset, would find themselves magically transported to Agrabah. Guests would ride on the magic carpet while attempting to release the genie, who was trapped in the Cave of Wonders. The second attraction, Hercules in the Underworld, was a 3D attraction that took guests on an adventure with the characters from the film. Groups of players, each with their own joystick, steered Pegasus and the heroes in an attempt to defeat Hades. The third immersive attraction was the Virtual Jungle Cruise. Guests would board an inflatable raft, sitting on top of a large pad in front of a screen. The game started in the Jungle Cruise at the Magic Kingdom before a virtual skipper sends guests to the age of the dinosaurs. The skipper accidentally drops the device that controls the time machine, and guests paddle down the river in an attempt to grab it. The pad below reacted to the players' paddles and the flow of the water to maximize realism. A less immersive attraction in Explore Zone was Treasure of the Incas, which had guests drive toy trucks through a maze in order to win prizes. The drivers operated the vehicles on a screen, and a teammate that could see the top of the maze would yell directions at them. Disney Quest also had a few restaurants that guests could eat at. These counter-service eateries were Food Quest, the Wonderland Cafe, and the Cheesecake Factory Express, a smaller-scale Cheesecake Factory concept exclusive to Disney Quest. Once guests had explored the entire complex, they would walk down a spiral staircase and exit through the first floor gift shop. Despite the lack of marketing, Disney Quest at Downtown Disney was a success, sucking tourists and shoppers through its shiny new gates. However, Disney Regional Entertainment was not surprised or impressed by the crowds it initially drew. After all, it was located within the Walt Disney World Resort, catering to a dedicated, if not captive, market. In fact, it seems that Levitt and Disney Regional Entertainment didn't view Disney Quest Orlando as the chain's official debut. It was a mere test for the planned regional complexes, and the next Disney Quest to open would be given the fanfare one would expect from Disney.
Oh? Oh, god damn it. Nope. You get no ad time from me. And skip.
Hi everybody, I'm Janet Davies.
And I'm Jim Rose, and welcome to one of the most incredible places in Chicago this year. It's called Disney Quest, and it's located on the corner of Ohio and Rush in Chicago, just 1 block west of Michigan Avenue.
JR, right behind us is a 5-story building that is an indoor interactive theme park.
Ooh.
It is full of high-tech virtual reality games and gadgetry. I tell you, it is 90,000 square feet of pure fun, good family fun. And I guarantee there is no place in the United States like this, except in Orlando, where the original Disney Quest is.
Before Disney Quest Orlando opened, Disney Quest Chicago was announced. This would be the first of hopefully many Disney Quests throughout the world, with Disney projecting around 30 locations. Disney Quest Chicago opened a year after Orlando's, debuting on June 16, 1999. The complex, located on the corner of Rush and Ohio, was given a large opening celebration, with an entire television special documenting the ceremonies. The building was similar to Disney Quest Orlando in that it was 5 floors, but it was slightly smaller at 90,000 square feet as opposed to Orlando's 100,000. Having Disney Quest in Chicago was an ambitious step for Disney, but it was also a decision that made perfect sense. Chicago was the third most populated American city, and it was also the birthplace of Walt Disney. It was far enough away from both Orlando and Anaheim to deliver Disney to an entirely new market. And GameWorks was set to open a location just outside of the city in the summer of 1999 as well, but that was probably just a coincidence. The main goal of Disney Quest Chicago was to become the Magic Kingdom of the Midwest. Due to the lack of space for the Chicago location, some of the features and games were forced to have fewer stations, but the main layout and attractions remained the same. While many locals were excited to have a Disney theme park come to their backyard, experts and journalists were more skeptical. Apart from the criticism of the complex's cheesy architecture not fitting in with the surrounding area, they weren't sure whether Disney would see a return on the investment. Interest in both GameWorks and Disney Quest was dwindling fast. The ever-changing landscape of technology was diverting consumer focus to the internet and home consoles. And while the public was eager to experience both indoor amusement center concepts, the chances of locals becoming regulars was falling by the minute. This meant that Disney Quest Chicago would have to rely more on tourists, which did not bode well for a large-scale regional expansion. While critics lacked confidence in Disney Quest, Disney had far too much. The head of attendance calculating at the Walt Disney Company estimated that around 3 million guests would visit Disney Quest per year. However, this would have been nearly impossible, as proved by this quote from a 1999 article from the Chicago
They're always
Tribune. The average length of
overestimating.
stay is in the 2.5 to 3 hour range. So to cram in 3 million visitors a year while maintaining some crowd control, Disney Quest would have to stay open about 17 hours a day, every day, and remain at full capacity the entire time. Apparently, no one had learned anything from the opening of Club Disney, which learned nothing from the opening of Euro Disneyland. In late 1998, Disney had announced that a third Disney Quest would be built in Philadelphia. This location would have been located on the popular Market Street as part of an ambitious redevelopment of the area. The city was thrilled to be chosen by Disney, and by the time of Disney Quest Chicago's debut, the space was being cleared in preparation for construction and was set to open in the summer of 2000.
Thanks to
However,
Eisner.
production delays pushed the project back to the summer of 2002. In late 2000, both Disney Quest Orlando and Disney Quest Chicago received a brand new attraction. Hercules in the Underworld was replaced by Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Buccaneer Gold, which featured large screens surrounding a miniature pirate ship that guests would board. Each player would have a physical cannon that would fire digital cannonballs at enemy ships. A more advanced version of the game's technology would later be used in Toy Story Midway Mania. Players would also encounter a serpent that looked very similar to the Lego model that opened at the Downtown Disney Lego store in 1997. Guests playing the game would have to defeat the Jolly Roger, which was not an easy task, and the majority of players would lose the game, with their boats sinking into the water. It is worth noting that both the Pirates of the Caribbean and Aladdin Disney Quest games were designed by Randy Posh, a virtual reality specialist and professor famous for his talk and book, The Last Lecture, which he produced before passing away in 2008. The new Pirates of the Caribbean game temporarily reinvigorated excitement in the Chicago location, which had already waned in its 18 months of operation. Unfortunately, it was too late. Disney Quest Chicago surprisingly did not live up to Disney's unrealistic expectations, and Disney announced that it would close the location on September 4th, 2001. The official reasoning was that the complex was simply not generating enough revenue for the company to justify paying the expensive rent of downtown Chicago. Also, the complex was diverting a massive amount of time and money that Disney and the Imagineers could be spending on more promising and more profitable projects. On top of this, reviews of the Chicago location had not been stellar. The lines were long, the price of admission, $16 for 2.5 hours of games, was too expensive for many, and the complex did not deliver the Disney magic that the theme parks could. Disney Quest Orlando complemented the resort well, but Disney Quest Chicago, alone in the heart of a busy city, felt cold and corporate rather than warm and colorful. Along with the announcement that Disney Quest Chicago would be closed, Disney Regional Entertainment announced that Disney Quest Philadelphia would be scrapped. Disney essentially abandoned the prime real estate in the middle of construction, leaving only a large plot of dirt. Locals coined it the Disney Hole, and to this day, it has not been developed further than a paved parking lot. This, along with the closure of Chicago, slightly tarnished Disney's reputation in both regions. Despite the cancellation of all future plans for Disney Quest Orlando remained open, receiving little attention from the company and little to no updates. Apart from the closure of the Cave of Wonders slide and the addition of Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Buccaneer Gold, the Treasure of the Incas interactive maze game would be closed after a few years of operation. Cell phone frequencies caused interference with the remote-controlled trucks, and on one occasion, one of the vehicles burst into flames, which is terrifying
What?
considering that this occurred in a building that had no windows and a main transportation system of a magic elevator. The space was eventually filled with Let's Go Jungle arcade games. The Magic Mirrors attraction closed in 2005 and was replaced with additional seating. And perhaps the most disappointing removal was the Cheesecake Factory Express around 2008. In 2011, the Cyberlator's screens were turned off, and they became just regular elevators. A few years after this, to help promote the film Wreck-It Ralph, a large structure of the title character as well as multiple Fix-It Felix games were added to the complex. These, along with a few minor additions and a few major closures toward the end of its lifespan, were the only changes Disney Quest Orlando saw. The subsidiary Disney Regional Entertainment lasted until 2010, when it closed 5 ESPN zones and sold 2 more. The branch dissolved, with Disney Quest being absorbed into Disney Parks and Resorts. The indoor theme park was left to die, with Disney giving discounts on tickets and sometimes offering them for free with certain vacation packages. Finally, on June 30th, 2015, it was reported that Disney Quest was going to close at the end of 2016 to be replaced with a new NBA-themed attraction. However, 2016 came and went, with Disney Quest staying open the entire year. It wouldn't be until January 30th, 2017 that Disney would announce that Disney Quest's final day was to be July 2nd. To commemorate the closing, pass holder discounts made ticket prices, which had increased slightly in its nearly 2 decades of operation, exactly $19.98, as a tribute to the year that it opened. After 19 years of operation, Disney Quest closed its doors. The building sat abandoned for 1 month, until demolition began in August. Construction has begun on the NBA Experience, which is set to open in the summer of 2019. The closure of Disney Quest Orlando, along with the recent closure of Anaheim's ESPN Zone, brought an end to the ventures of Disney Regional Entertainment, with every location of all 3 chains now defunct. But what about Michael Eisner? He seemed to be largely absent from the development and debut of Disney Quest, unlike other projects, such as Euro Disneyland and Disney's America, where he was on the front lines promoting and explaining the new parks. He did endorse Disney Quest in newspapers and a few television interviews, but it seemed to be less of a priority for him, and certainly not one of his passion projects. When the initial concept was pitched to him in the mid-90s, he told the Imagineers to, quote, "kill the project. Why should we go forward with it? So what if we can make money?" The exact reasoning for the strong reaction and what eventually changed his mind is hard to say. Maybe it was as selfish as the announcement of GameWorks, in his desire to take on his former partner and new rival. Maybe it was as innocent as the Imagineers strengthening the concept and presenting the promises of the new technology. Either way, the lack of attention on Disney Quest was typical of Eisner's second era. 1994 was the watershed. Frank Wells' passing, Euro Disneyland's failure, the defeat in Virginia, and his own health issues had turned the ambitious, creative executive into an unfocused, fickle, and often angry CEO. The development of Disney Quest was indicative of the state of the company after the tumultuous 7 years since Euro Disneyland's opening, and it was a mere preview of the mind-boggling creative choices and shocking business decisions that the next 7 years would bring. Their renaissance was over, and Disney was about to enter the 2000s. Buckle up. This is going to be a bumpy ride.
Everybody's waiting, capiche? Now don't be late, babe.
That thing. Oh wow, it seems like all of this could just be pinned on Eisner. He is at like the heart of it. I swear to God, every time it's just him. All right, Euro Disneyland. Let's see how he failed this time. Failure of Euro Disneyland. I feel like I would have done well. Sorry, doggo. No ad time for you. Go away.
Et maintenant, je déclare Euro Disney officiellement ouvert.
Is that his attempt at French? Did he at least practice? Quite a bit of fanfare going on.
Called Euro Disneyland, it will have cost the Disney Corporation $4 billion.
Ooh.
Disney executives are hoping that within a year of opening, 11 million people will have gone through the gates.
This agreement with the Walt Disney Company is a very, very interesting contract and affair. I'm sure it will be a great success.
Euro Disneyland is dedicated to the young and the young at heart, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration for all the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we proudly present Space Mountain.
On January 15th, 1975, the first Space Mountain opened in the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. The concept for an indoor space-themed roller coaster dated all the way back to the early 1960s, with Walt Disney and Imagineer John Hench discussing a new Tomorrowland attraction to be named Spaceport. After the success of the Matterhorn, Arrow's revolutionary tubular steel coaster, Disney and Hench wanted to utilize the unique ride system. This time, instead of taking guests to the top of the Swiss Alps, the coaster would take guests on a trip through the final frontier. Unfortunately, when Walt Disney died on December 15, 1966, the plans were shelved, as the company was more focused on completing Walt's Florida project. However, after the Magic Kingdom proved to be massively successful upon its debut in 1971, it was clear that an expansion to the park was necessary to meet the strong demand. More specifically, the park needed more e-ticket attractions to appease young thrill seekers. The first solution to this was to create a hasty and abridged version of Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean, which would open in the Adventureland section of the park in 1973. The next step was a major expansion to Tomorrowland. This included moving the Carousel of Progress from Disneyland into a new Carousel Theater, building a new people mover in the form of the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, and finally realizing Disney and Hench's dream of an indoor coaster themed after spaceflight. Disney approached communications company RCA to sponsor the attraction, and they agreed, providing $10 million of Space Mountain's approximately $20 million construction cost.
Damn.
The show building, built on the other side of the park's train tracks, featured a paper-white exterior with a conical shape and tall futuristic spires. The coaster featured 2 separate tracks and a variety of props and special effects. Space Mountain opened at the Magic Kingdom on January 15, 1975, along with the Carousel of Progress. It debuted to much fanfare, with an entire television special leading up to its grand opening.
Hi. How are you?
Good afternoon.
I'm Lucy.
Arnez. I'm Lyle.
Wagoner. Meet Tommy.
Toon.
We've been invited to Disney World to see Space Mountain.
We're traveling light, we brought a smile, a dance, a song.
To say Space Mountain was a hit would be an understatement. The ride was so successful that 2 years later in 1977, Disneyland would receive a Space Mountain of its own. A multitude of size and track accommodations had to be implemented in order to fit the attraction into Disneyland's limited space. But the experience of the two attractions was essentially the same, with Disneyland's different ride cars, lack of 2-track system, and smaller size being the main differences. In 1983, 6 years after Disneyland Space Mountain would debut, Tokyo Disneyland would open its gates. The Japanese park featured a Space Mountain on its opening day, closely resembling Disneyland's version. Once again, the coaster received a positive response from guests. In fact, Tokyo Disneyland overall was a massive success for Disney and the Oriental Land Company, the company that owns and operates Tokyo Disney Resort.
From the outside, it looks a lot like the other two. But there's one startling difference about Japan's Magic Kingdom. Walt Disney World Productions is designing it, even sharing in the profits, but they do not own this one. Oriental Land Company does. And they wanted not a Mickey with slanted eyes, but a mouse that roared American.
The Oriental Land Company pays Disney to license its properties and contract its Imagineers, a system that has resulted in arguably the best Disney resort. In 1984,
Really?
the year after Tokyo Disneyland debuted, the Walt Disney Company hired a new CEO.
Oh,
and he
no.
had one question. Where to next?
Oh, no.
At the top of the showbiz headlines, the Premier of France and the President of the Disney Company signed a multi-million-dollar deal today to open Euro Disney in France. The agreement comes after 2 years of negotiations, during which Disney agreed to give the new park a French flavor. Set to open in 5 years, the world's 4th Disney playground will occupy 4,400 acres of what is now farmland, 20 miles east of Paris. As part of that cultural compromise, Mickey will still be Mickey and Donald will still be Donald, but in Euro Disney, Goofy becomes Dingo, and Snow White will be called Blanche-Neige. Liz?
Just 1 year after becoming chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company, Michael Eisner announced plans for a Euro Disneyland to be constructed near Paris, France. This seemed like the next obvious step for international expansion. There was only one problem. They forgot to ask France. While the project was built in coordination with the French government and French contractors, clearly the head of public opinion polling at the Walt Disney Company phoned in his report or was fired after reading the results because the citizens of France were very much not on board. Many prominent French commentators expressed distaste for what they saw as a capitalistic invasion of their beautiful countryside, some going as far as to promote burning the resort down and describing it as a cultural Chernobyl. The CEO of the resort, Robert Fitzpatrick, attempted to assuage the situation by explaining that the company didn't come in and say, okay, we're going to put a beret and a baguette on Mickey Mouse. And yet, potential arsons and comparisons to deadly catastrophes turned out to be the least of the resort's worries.
The Magic Kingdom as a park predominantly was developed 30 years ago and will be brought to France intact. It will be different in that it will take not only advantage of, but have respect for the French culture. We will be beginning now to look at various different means of financing all of the different parts of Euro Disneyland, and we'll resort to the magic of Disney and hope that in the end makes the dream come true.
Here are just a few of the issues that Disney experienced before opening.
Here we
Number
go.
1. Disney executives such as Michael Eisner require that solely English be spoken during all developmental meetings, sparking outrage among French citizens. Number 2. Disney's cast member guidelines prohibiting jewelry, facial hair, and certain hairstyles not only angered and disgusted the French as a violation of individual liberties, but it turns out that it was also illegal under French law. Euro Disney spokesman Thor Dengelman pointed out that without the rule, the company would not be able to provide the Disney product that people would be expecting. He completely forgot that no one wanted the product to begin with. He went on to say, "It would be like going to see a production of Hamlet in which everyone looked different than you expected. Would you ever go again?" Number 3. In the 4 years leading up to Euro Disneyland's opening, 3 theme parks, all with budgets well over $100 million, opened in France. And by Euro Disneyland's opening, 2 had gone bankrupt and 1 was in financial ruin. Not a good sign, but Fitzpatrick was quick to comment, "My biggest fear is that we will be too successful." Plans were announced for an MGM Studios Europe and a European Epcot before Euro Disneyland even opened. Number 4. Operating under this lack of hesitation, Eisner made sure that the Walt Disney Company would own a 49% stake in the Euro Disneyland resort, and the only reason they didn't own more was because the French government wouldn't allow it. Number 5. At some point, the French government began dropping heavy hints to Eisner and the—
Hang on, what was that? I didn't catch that number 5. It was waning confidence of French government.
At some point, the French government began dropping heavy hints to Eisner and the other executives that perhaps the French would not accept a full-on Disney invasion. Number 6. As construction progressed, protesting increased. On one trip by Eisner to check on the development, he was greeted by demonstrators that were throwing eggs and globs of ketchup and holding Mickey Go Home signs. Number 7. Small villages near the resort expressed concerns over the noise that a nighttime fireworks show would make. Number 8. Disney, sticking with their typical policy, banned wine from the French theme park. And finally, number 9. The name Euro Disneyland did not play well in Europe. As Eisner later stated, as Americans, the word Euro is believed to mean glamorous or exciting. For Europeans, it turned out to be a term that they associated with business, currency, and commerce. All of those issues, and I'm sure others that I did not mention, were all present before opening day. So did Eisner and Disney manage to work out all of the kinks, and did Euro Disneyland turn out to be another smashing success for the company?
Nope.
Welcome to Maison Perrier.
Nope. You get no ad time from me.
Ailing their opening day events. The opening of Disneyland was disastrous for a variety of reasons, the most cited being the use of counterfeit tickets that more than doubled the expected number of visitors.
Counterfeit
The opening day of
tickets?
Euro Disneyland, April 12, 1992, had the exact opposite problem. The head of public opinion polling, most likely given one last chance by the company, estimated that around 500,000 visitors could show up on opening day. How many actually showed up? Around 25,000. More people rushed through the gates of Disneyland on the press preview day in 1955 than entered Euro Disneyland on its opening day in 1992. This was for a variety of reasons. First, scared at the potential of 500,000 guests at a park made for around 60,000, the French government, police, media, and Disney attempted to warn the masses not to all come on opening day. This worked a little too well. Also, employees working for the suburban railroad between Paris and Euro Disneyland went on strike, most likely due to the impossible workload of shuttling the projected amount of visitors to the park. Supposedly, 2 bombs were detonated on nearby power lines in an attempt to sabotage the park's opening, although this did not cut off electricity. The attendance numbers for opening day were embarrassing, and Eisner and Disney hoped that this was just a one-day anomaly. Perhaps the most depressing part of the entire situation was that the park itself was brilliant. Spearheaded by famed Imagineer Tony Baxter, Europe's Magic Kingdom was a beautiful, classy, and quaint version of its predecessors. Not only did it have intricate theming and groundbreaking storytelling continuity, but the park maintained a surprisingly calm atmosphere, the theme park equivalent to a Sunday stroll. Baxter and his team did their homework, and had it not been for their care and consideration, the outrage the park caused could have been a lot worse. Baxter made the integration of French culture look easy. This could be due to the fact that he had been drawing inspiration from one Frenchman in particular for nearly 2 decades. Both Walt Disney and Tony Baxter had a mutual appreciation for the work of 19th century French novelist Jules Verne. Verne's novels are among the most recognizable of his era, and his work, along with that of H.G. Wells, popularized the science fiction genre and more specifically, fascination in steampunk technology. Steampunk, as the name implies, is a genre of science fiction that focuses on technology powered by steam, and often features elaborate bronze pipes, cogs, and other metallic structures. Walt Disney would produce feature film adaptations of Verne's novels, the most popular of these being 1954's adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. In 1970, 4 years after the death of Walt Disney, Tony Baxter would begin his work with Walt Disney Imagineering. One of his first projects was art director on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea Submarine Voyage, which was to debut at the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World on opening day. This would only be the first of many times that Baxter would attempt to adapt Jules Verne's work for Disney parks. During construction on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Baxter would design the concept for a new land in Disneyland, the never-built Discovery Bay, an area that would have been filled with attractions directly based off of the work of Verne's and Wells. In the late 1980s, Baxter would be given the most control he had been granted yet. He was named the executive producer of Euro Disneyland. With his oversight, Euro Disneyland received the most elaborate Big Thunder Mountain in the world, a breathtaking and unique castle, and the first of any Magic Kingdom-style Disney park to not receive a Tomorrowland. In its place, a new land was constructed, named Discoveryland. Designed by Imagineer Tim Delaney and his team, Discoveryland drew inspiration from Discovery Bay, the work of Vernon Wells, and a variety of other sources. When it opened in 1992, the land looked much different than any Tomorrowland that had come before it, and it actually solved one of the biggest issues that Disney parks have been facing since their inception. The Tomorrowland problem, as has been named by Imagineers and fans, is the issue that arises when Disney constructs or renovates the area, only to have technology catch up to the theming, rendering it obsolete. Put simply, the problem with Tomorrow is that it always comes. But with Discoveryland, Delaney and his team solved this issue. They created a tomorrow that will never come, a tomorrow imagined by the creative minds of the past.
Right, when Jules Verne was 11 years old, he ran away to sea as a cabin boy, bound for the West Indies. But his father caught him in the nick of time and took him home and gave him a good ticking off, and quite right too. And from that moment on, Jules Verne made a vow that he would only ever travel in his imagination. And so he did, to the North Pole, to the moon, 20,000 leagues under the sea. And he took the rest of us on the ride with him. And tonight, Jules Verne returns to France to open Discoveryland, which features his favourite destination, the future.
Bonsoir. Le monde de Discoveryland retrace la quête pour parvenir à concrétiser les espoirs et les rêves de ces hommes de tous les temps qui furent et sont les inventeurs du futur. Ici, on peut constater qu'imagination rime avec innovation. Aussi, j'ai le plaisir d'ouvrir Discoveryland par ce dicton qui depuis toujours a été le mien. Ce que l'homme peut concevoir, l'homme peut l'accomplir.
Wait, what? I was not expecting an X-Wing just then.
D'aucuns m'en attribuent la paternité.
When Discoveryland opened, it featured an Astro Orbiter-style ride named the Orbitron. It also had a Videopolis, themed after the island at the top of the world. The film partly responsible for
Wait. Is the audio off? Like, what is...
killing the chances of Discovery Bay at Disneyland. Paris's Videopolis was originally supposed to be a teen dance club, similar to its Disneyland counterpart. But this was scrapped due to lack of interest. Instead, when Videopolis opened in 1992, it featured a show called Rock Shock, a stage show featuring dancing teens that were described as following in the footsteps of Jules Verne. Because when I think of Jules Verne, I think of this. Also located in this area was Cafe Hyperion, a counter-service restaurant themed to ticket booths for the docked dirigible. Finally, Discoveryland featured Le Visionarium, the time-travel-themed Circle Vision animatronic hybrid show in which guests traveled through time with the timekeeper and...
Wait, hang on, it can't just be me, right? Am I going crazy? But I swear, the audio and video are like not properly synced together. Am I crazy?
Traveled through time with the timekeeper and even ran into Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. On the border of Discoveryland were a few attractions familiar to fans of the US parks. On opening day, Discoveryland featured a Star Tours and Captain EO, which saw George Lucas's sci-fi vision find a home in Discoveryland. There was also an Autopia in Discoveryland, themed to 1950s Ford cars. Discoveryland is an example of just one of Euro Disneyland's many cases of brilliant theming and execution. This made the parks...
Hang on. The audio is definitely off. Let me reload the video. That was weird. Because it was talking about something that hadn't happened yet. I'm like, what? 1732.
Introducing...
The hell is happening just now? 1732.
Controversy and troubled opening all the more painful. And worse, the issues would persist. The resort was a disaster. Euro Disneyland's numbers did not improve as expected, and the sheer cost of running all of the resort's hotels were making the financial problems even worse. This was due in part to the global recession in the early 90s, on top of the mixed response from the French locals. In its opening year, the park lost around 3,000 of its 12,000 employees due to alleged poor working conditions. In 1994, just 2 years after its debut, Eisner referenced the possibility that Euro Disneyland might close down completely, and the company began admitting the poor performance and financial issues that the park was facing. But luckily, despite the failure of the resort catching Eisner and everyone else off guard, they had a backup. When looking over the opening day Discoveryland attractions, you might notice that a familiar e-ticket is missing. Imagineers had planned to include said attraction in Discoveryland on opening day, but after going over the budget for the proposed ride, they decided to save it for a few years after opening to reinvigorate interest in the park in case that it waned. They did not expect the situation to be as dire as it was. So with no other options and an increasingly limited budget, Euro Disneyland put all of its hope into the opening of a new Space Mountain. If it was successful, it could potentially save the resort. And if it wasn't, Euro Disneyland would be the first Disney park to become completely defunct.
Yeah, hang on. It's talking about Space Mountain, and then the it only shows now. It cannot be me. It can't just be me, right? Is anyone else in comments noticing this? Hang on, sort by newest. I'm not the only one. 5 days ago. 40 seconds of video get cut at some point. Timer next to volume controls. Video starts to break. Sync issue. I'm not the only one. I am not the only one. Wait, what? Oh, they're right. The timer thing only goes up to like 1930 or something, even though it says there's 20 minutes of video. Yeah. 6 days ago, 5 days ago. Okay, so it's not just me. I'm not going crazy. The video and audio is desynced. Again, wow. My god. How many more of their failures are there? Jaws the ride. American Idol theme park experience? What? Disney's official airline? Tomb Raider the ride? Forgotten Disneyland attractions? The craziest party Walt Disney ever threw? Teen nightclub? Back to the Future the ride? History of Captain EO? What? How have I never heard of some of these things? Confrontation? Oh, a VR video about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Nice. I swear to God, just so many. Oh, a lot of the most viewed videos are like about Disney. I guess that's the one thing people only think people care about. Alright, one more. Disney's official airline, let's go. Nope, back off. No ad time for you, go away.
On December 17, 1903, Orville and Wilbur Wright made 4 flights in their powered flying machine, with the final pass of the day lasting a record 59 seconds. The brothers had been experimenting with flight for over 4 years, and to say that their flying machine's successful run would change the world would be an understatement. The years immediately
Disney
following
Airline.
the brothers' flight would see the most innovative minds and the most powerful government scrambling to create a machine capable of controlled engine-powered flight, or as it was now known as, an airplane. Innovation would improve the machine's functionality, as well as lead to several different designs and models. The conflict of World War I would fuel the development of the airplane further, and mail delivered by air showed commercial promise. Airships led to the creation of the first airline in 1909, and the first commercial airplane took flight on January 1, 1914, between St. Petersburg and Tampa, Florida, with a single passenger, the former mayor of St. Petersburg, paying the $400 ticket, which would be just under $10,000 today.
Jesus.
After World War I, the United States Postal Service created an elaborate network of flights for airmail, and it offered contracts to a few independent companies to fulfill the services on these routes. These airlines would develop into some of today's most recognizable names in commercial aviation, including Delta Airlines, American Airlines, and United Airlines. However, there was one
Welcome to
company that
United
came out of the
Airlines. How
airline
tough
board
are
that
you?
travelers no longer see at the terminal, but is immediately recognizable to many, especially those traveling to Orlando, Florida to visit a brand new vacation destination in the early 70s.
This is your captain. We've been cleared for takeoff. We'll be flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet.
Eastern Airlines.
This is your captain speaking. We'll be experiencing some turbulence. Should last more than 10-15 minutes. At this time, I'm going to ask that you fasten your seatbelts.
Eddie Vernon Rickenbacker was born on October 8, 1890. He was raised in Columbus, Ohio, by his parents, 2 Swiss immigrants, along with his 7 siblings. The family lived in poverty,
7?
with his father working construction and odd jobs. His father, who was especially strict on the often mischievous Eddie, instilled in his son a love for machines and tinkering. Eddie would be repeatedly told that a machine has to have a purpose, a mantra that Eddie would take to heart. Tragically, Eddie's father was killed in a construction accident when Eddie was only 12, forcing him to drop out of school and support his family. He continued his love for machinery and took engineering classes on the side. He was particularly fascinated with automobiles, and in 1906, he would get a job with a race car driver named Lee Frere, who took Eddie under his wing. This would spark a lifelong love for racing. After his stint with Frere, Eddie would become a car salesman for the Columbus Buggy Company and begin racing on his own. In the following years, he would participate in the Indianapolis 500 multiple times and set a world speed record at Daytona. Before a race in
The Indy
California in
500?
November 1916, Eddie would have the chance to fly in an aircraft with aviation pioneer Glenn Martin. It would be a flight that would change his life. After World War I broke out, Eddie expressed interest in fighting for the Allies, and in 1917, when the United States declared war on Germany, Eddie would have his chance. He was among the first group of men to be shipped overseas, given preferred treatment for the fame he had acquired as a race car driver. World War I was the first major war to see air combat, and the new landscape of machinery fascinated Eddie. After claiming he was 25 instead of his actual age of 27 in order to qualify for flight training, he was enlisted into one of the air combat units. His skills in the air would result in multiple promotions, eventually being named commander of his squadron. He would also receive the Medal of Honor and would set many records during the war, including most victories with a total of 26. His service would give him nationwide acclaim, and he would be treated as a celebrity and the most recognizable aviator in the country, an honor he would hold until Charles Lindbergh's solo non-stop transatlantic flight in 1927. In 1923, Rickenbacker and 2 of his business partners founded an airline named Florida Airways. Rickenbacker's fame allowed him to draw major investors such as Ann Morgan, Percy Rockefeller, and Henry Ford. Florida Airways was able to secure an airmail contract with the U.S. Postal Service. Rickenbacker's airline would only last until the summer of 1927. Passenger revenue was lower than expected, possibly due to the high ticket price. A one-way ticket from Miami to Jacksonville cost $60, or just over $800 today. All of the commercial airlines of the time relied heavily on the revenue from the airmail contracts, and turnover was high for the routes, with many companies dissolving or being absorbed into others. For instance, just 2 months after Florida Airways ceased operations, a man named Harold Pitcairn would take over Florida Airways' mail route with his airline, Pitcairn Aviation. Just 2 years after that, a man named Clement Keyes would purchase Pitcairn Aviation and absolve it into his company, North American Aviation. Keyes would change the company's name from Pitcairn Aviation to Eastern Air Transport, as all of the airline's routes at the time were on the east coast of the United States. General Motors would purchase North American Aviation and therefore Eastern Air Transport in 1933. This was under the guidance of none other than Eddie Rickenbacker, who would as a result become Eastern's general manager in 1933. He would combine his remaining assets from Florida Airways with Eastern Air Transport to create Eastern Airlines. 5 years later, in 1938, Rickenbacker and other investors would buy Eastern from General Motors for $3.5 million. Rickenbacker would invest heavily in the company's employees, offering benefits and improving work conditions. This would lead to a rapid expansion for Eastern, with Rickenbacker finally finding a solid business venture after years of failures. Unfortunately, it seemed that Eddie's luck was short-lived. On February 26, 1941, Rickenbacker boarded an Eastern Airlines flight to Brownsville, Texas, with multiple stops in between. The plane was heading for Atlanta's airport around midnight, but began to rapidly lose altitude in the heavy rain. The plane slammed into a tree line and crashed into the ground, rolling several times and ejecting some of the passengers. 5 passengers and 3 crew members were killed, and reports said that Rickenbacker was among them. However, the veteran miraculously survived, pinned under the wreckage. Other passengers attempting to signal oncoming planes suggested lighting a flare, but Rickenbacker, through his intense pain, warned that it could ignite the spilled gasoline. Luckily, a dog spotted the surviving passengers and guided them to a nearby house. Rickenbacker was in critical condition and was given a 50-50 chance to live by his doctors. The crash had resulted in him suffering a fractured skull, fractured hip, shattered left elbow, paralyzed left hand, a broken pelvis, broken ribs, broken left knee, a dislocated eye, and more. Amazingly, Eddie would be brought back from the brink of death and would return to his position at Eastern. Later that year, the United States entered World War II. Rickenbacker and Eastern helped with the war efforts, using the company to support military flights, which in turn added new routes. The expanded Eastern thrived in the years following the war, and the company purchased Colonial Airlines in 1956, adding a network of flights to Canada. However, Rickenbacker's refusal to invest in jet planes resulted in his ousting from CEO on October 1, 1959, though he would stay on as director and chairman of the board. Eastern implemented its first jets the following year. In 1963, Rickenbacker vacated his positions at Eastern Airlines, ending his 3 decades at the company. Eastern continued its innovation and expansion through the 60s.
Brian, look! There's a new kind of plane! That's Eastern's new Boeing 727 jet. Look how high the tail is. 34 feet. Look where they put the jets. In the tail assembly. That's one reason it's so quiet. The passengers are always riding ahead of the sound. Where does it fly to? I don't know.
It flies north. You can hightail it on Eastern's new 727 jetliner to Washington, Philadelphia, and Boston. And a unique new dining service is worth writing home about. Choose from a selection of superb entrees like lobster Newburg, filet mignon with Bordelaise sauce, prepared as you like it. Eastern 727 jet. Quiet as a library. The smartest way to leave town? Come fly with Eastern.
In 1964, they were the first airline to fly the Boeing 727. The expansion allowed for more and more people to have the ability to fly, regardless of economic status. In 1967, Eastern purchased another airline, Mackey Airlines, and also expanded their international flights further. In 1970, Eastern adopted the slogan, "The Wings of Man." Their previous slogans, "First and on-time dependability," "See how much better an airline can be," "We want everyone to fly," and "Number one to the sun," had been short-lived and had done little to boost the airline's marketing. Wings of Man, however, restored a sense of class to the airline, an issue most airlines were struggling with as they reduced rates and increased availability. On September 23, 1970, it was announced that Eastern Airlines would be the official airline of the Walt Disney World Resort, set to open the following year.
Here we
Eastern
go.
claimed to have more flights going to Florida every day than all of the other airlines combined. This allowed for double promotion of both the airline and the new vacation destination.
Do you know the way to the Magic Kingdom? I'll never get there. Never get there. Do you know the way to the Magic Kingdom? Sure I do. But can you fly?
You can fly to Walt Disney World in Florida on Eastern, the airline of Walt Disney World, the Wings of Man.
Eastern began offering vacation packages for trips to the resort, and children flying Eastern to Orlando were given a fun flight bag. Inside was Mickey and Minnie hand puppets, a paper Mickey mask, Magic Kingdom-themed games and puzzles, a DIY book dust cover, and other cereal box caliber items. The largest obligation for Eastern's end of the contract was to sponsor an attraction at the Magic Kingdom. Their ride, If You Had Wings, would open in Tomorrowland on June 5, 1972, less than a year after the park opened. This Omnimover ride took guests through different scenes of Eastern's premier travel destinations, such as Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the Bahamas, all showcased with simple sets and projectors. The most unique part of the ride was the Speed Room, a tunnel with a film projection that wrapped around an inclined lift. This gave the illusion that you were taking off in a plane, with fans blowing to simulate the experience. The most memorable part of the ride was the theme song written by Disney composer Buddy Baker, which is either sweet or slightly sinister sounding depending on the viewer, but it is no doubt catchy.
If you had wings, you could do many things. You could widen your world if you had wings.
Once guests exited the ride, they were greeted by an Eastern Airlines travel agent willing to book their next vacation with the airline. This is similar to the design of Chevrolet's Test Track sponsorship today. Eastern's sponsorship with Disney prompted them to purchase more planes and add new flights to Orlando. By this point, Eastern was one of the biggest airlines in the country. In 1975, retired astronaut Frank Borman became CEO of Eastern Airlines. He replaced the Wings of Man campaign with a new campaign starring himself, along with a new slogan. In 1977, Borman would make Eastern the first U.S. airline to fly the Airbus A300 jet. They would also launch the Boeing 757 in 1982. However, these purchases combined with high oil prices would put Eastern deep in debt. They had difficulty competing with airlines offering lower fares, and its campaign to stress quality over price did little to sway consumers. On top of this, most of the airline's workforce were unionized, making it difficult to compete with other airlines employing non-union workers such as People Express. Eastern's attempt to cut wages against the will of the union resulted in massive strikes among the workforce. Both sides began to sabotage the other.
We started at 7:30. This engine is basically done as soon as the electrician gets done, right? Hour and a half. I can go in there and pull the maintenance manual out, and there's a manual in there that thick to change this engine, right? I can take 2 days to change this engine, right? So basically, that's what we were doing. I was one of the people that was more, shall we say, aggressive at it, right? Because I was protecting, in other words, I was like an old groundhog digging in his hole. I was protecting my hole.
The issues piled on, and Borman had no choice but to sell the airline in 1986. This would result in the beginning of Eastern's descent. Eastern Airlines was sold to Frank Lorenzo for just $615 million. Lorenzo was one of the most infamous union busters of his time. His deregulation strategies were aggressive, and many described them as heartless and cruel. In 1972, Lorenzo had acquired the struggling Texas International Airlines. He and his business partner Robert Carney were able to save the airline by offering cheaper fares and restructuring the routes. Lorenzo then attempted to take over both National Airlines and Trans World Airlines, but failed to do both. Lorenzo instead restructured Texas International Airlines into Texas Air and New York Air, completed in 1980. The formation of the latter allowed Lorenzo to hire non-union employees for in some cases half the price, angering the current employees of Texas Air. New York Air also became a major competitor for Eastern Airlines, forcing them to lower fares and putting them in debt as Eastern was not able to break their labor contracts or get around them the same way that Lorenzo did. The next year, Lorenzo aggressively pursued the purchase of Continental Airlines, which was strongly opposed by Alvin Feldman, the president of the airline. Feldman attempted to dilute Lorenzo's shares by giving his employees a majority stock in the company, but the plan failed when the banks pulled out. After a lengthy battle, Lorenzo won, and Feldman, overcome with depression over what would be the loss of his company, on top of the personal struggle of losing his wife to cancer the year before, tragically took his own life. Lorenzo's takeover at Continental was poorly timed, as the company and the nation's economy were in dire straits. Continental's unions, who had opposed Lorenzo from the start, did not back down, and they would go on strike in 1983. All of this gave Lorenzo the opportunity to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, allowing him to lay off a majority of the workforce and void union contracts. The company began hiring more employees at lower wages, notably cutting pilot wages in half, and the company was able to turn a profit the following year. Eastern took notice of the tactics, and management suggested that if the union did not offer concessions, that a similar course of action to Lorenzo's might be taken. In a video message from Borman to his employees, he made his case.
We are really approaching a fundamental decision as a family here at Eastern.
Family?
And without saying I told you so, you know, and I'm quite convinced that many of you think have been predicting too many dire circumstances and issuing too many warnings, but let me just go back and tell you, we predicted what was going to happen with deregulation, and we're living it now. I simply urge you to select the proposal that we have offered, and I want you to understand with all of the honesty that I can muster in your eyes that in my estimation, you will be voting on your jobs.
This, of course, angered the union even more. After an attempt at a compromise in which the employees would take a stake in the company was foiled by a recession in late 1985, the battles between the management and employees returned. During the chaos, Lorenzo expressed interest in acquiring Eastern. Borman and other management offered an ultimatum to the unions: either offer concessions or be sold to Lorenzo. The unions offered a 15% reduction in wages if Borman resigned. Borman agreed, but the board rejected the offer, and Lorenzo acquired the company. That same year, Lorenzo would acquire People Express, which had acquired Frontier Airlines. This resulted in Lorenzo, through Texas Air, owning around 20% of the U.S.'s airline industry. The unions offered to negotiate new contracts with Lorenzo, but he did not respond to the request. Within a few months, over 2,000 employees were laid off, and pay cuts were threatened in order to keep Eastern afloat. Although many analysts claim that even with the most drastic pay cuts, Eastern would still be losing money. The Department of Transportation conducted a safety investigation on Eastern, finding no major issues, but officially warned the airline that the cost-cutting would result in safety concerns. This prompted many to choose other airlines. In 1987, Eastern would end their sponsorship with Disney and no longer be Walt Disney World's official airline. If You Had Wings was closed for 5 days and stripped of any references to the sponsorship. The ride reopened as If You Could Fly on June 6, 1987, mainly the same without the sponsorship or its signature theme song. Delta would soon replace Eastern as the official airline of Walt Disney World, and they would open their own ride in If You Could Fly's place on June 26, 1989, called Delta Dream Flight. Utilizing the same layout as the previous version of the ride, the attraction now took guests through the history of flight. Delta would not make the same attempt at in-flight experiences that Eastern did, and their sponsorship with the resort would only last until 1995. In 1996, Disney removed all Delta branding from the attraction, renaming it to simply Dream Flight before renaming it again a few months later to Take Flight. 2 years later, Take Flight would be replaced with the space's current resident, the Shooting Dark ride, Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. The original track layout and speed tunnel still remain in the attraction from If You Had Wings, and a futuristic instrumental of the attraction's theme song can still be heard in the Tomorrowland area music loop. Disney has gone without an official airline ever since Delta ended their sponsorship, although it does have a few themed planes with the Canadian airline, WestJet, and with a few other airlines as well. Lorenzo continued his war on Eastern's employees, selling off and restructuring profitable parts of the company in order to force union concessions. In 1989, Lorenzo sold Eastern's shuttle service to Donald Trump, who transformed the assets into Trump's shuttle. He also moved assets around within Texas Air and his other companies, destroying Eastern's ability to succeed. This eventually resulted in Eastern's filing for bankruptcy on March 9, 1989, in an attempt to once again hire non-union workers. Just a year later, however, Eastern was removed from Texas Air's management by court order due to its mismanagement and business tactics. Martin Shigreau, an executive who had a good relationship with labor unions, was appointed the head of Eastern in 1990. He would attempt to save the company by facing its well-known issues head-on.
I was appointed as trustee of this great and proud company. We are running a very good airline here today. The problem is that a lot of potential customers out there don't know it. Yes, we have a large, deep hole to climb out of. So what we're going to do is we're going to impose a very noticeable time frame on ourselves. For the next 100 days, you're going to see Eastern Airlines get a little bit better every day. So we're not going to promise the moon because you and I both know we can't deliver it. And I don't ask that you agree with everything I have to say. But let's get the dialogue going and let's go. Who wants to start? Yes, sir, in the back. Come up here and grab a mic so we can...
Mr. Shigreau,
This worked for a short period of time, but after conflicts in the Middle East caused jet fuel prices to rapidly increase, any chance the airline had at recovering was gone. Around this time, Shigreau argued to the court to increase his salary from $425,000 to $600,000. His audacity baffled many. Finally, on January 19, 1991, Eastern Airlines stopped flying. Many customers had already booked flights past this date, and 5,000 employees were immediately laid off. Its assets were sold, and Eastern Airlines, once one of the biggest airlines in the United States, was no more. 18 years later, in 2009, a group purchased the intellectual property of Eastern Airlines in an attempt to revive the brand. Their attempt would be short-lived, as the airline would only last until September 2017. The corporate culture that eventually led to the downfall of Eastern Airlines had been tense almost since its inception. This could be the fault of Rickenbacker, whose militaristic approach to his employees turned off many, and would prompt the first of many strikes in the airline's history. The struggle between workers and management was and is not unique to Eastern, and that same fight continues to rage on today. However, the absolute transparency on both sides of the Eastern debacle provide a fascinating look at the inner workings of a corporate conflict that a more reserved company like Disney would never allow. But that doesn't mean that similar conflicts don't exist. Behind closed doors, it could be utter chaos, while the consumer might see is an employee selling them soft drinks at a theme park or a mechanic fixing their flying machine.
When the dust settles, when the sun sets, there is one big question with which we are left. What, after all, is the meaning and purpose of the American corporation? Is it just a bundle of financial assets to be moved around to their highest and best use? Or is a corporation a network of mutual obligations, mutual responsibilities, a compact between people to produce wealth in the future? Can we have it both ways? The Eastern story suggests no.
I was expecting something different from this video. I thought there was going to be like a heavier leaning. What we haven't done yet? Hydrate, right? Yep, I knew it. Today's drink of choice is a Coca-Cola, the classic. Original taste. Hopefully not too original, because the original had coca leaves in it. Nice and fizzy. Like I was saying, I thought this video would have like a heavier lean towards the Disney aspect of this. It was more like a history of Eastern Airlines than Disney's official airline. I thought like Disney owned the airline or something, but no. They just had a partnership with them. This went a bit differently than this went differently than I thought I did. Do a Defunctland on my parents' marriage. Yeah, this went differently than I thought it would. It was like, oh hey, Disney's official airline. Although, like, no, there was barely any like Disney reference. Most of it was just like ethical business practice, unethical business practices rather. I want to watch the Kid City one, but that's an hour long. Oh yeah, the SeaWorld terrible submarine ride. Let's see. Wait, how often do these videos come out? This is the latest one. 12 days ago, 4 months ago, 7 months ago, 1 year ago. Okay, so this is very infrequent. I guess I would imagine that these take quite some time to like research and like put together. Like finding all of like the video footage and whatnot and like all the facts. The fair that changed America. Walt Disney's childhood amusement park, Electric Park. A roundabout history of the Ferris wheel. The history of the original Ghostbusters. History of McDonald's and Disney. Alright, one last video. Failure of Hong Kong Disneyland. Tempting. Abandoned Santa Claus theme parks. What? Okay, this caught my attention. Let's go.
Fancy feast.
Let's go after this ad.
My name is Kevin Perger. I investigate theme park rides that have been closed, offed, killed. This time of year, most people are thinking about decking the halls and what presents they're going to get their loved ones. Usually I would be too, but at the moment, I can't focus on neither the holly or the jolly. I am haunted. Haunted by a photograph. This photograph. That's right, jolly old St. Nick. He has his own theme park. Or had. That's just the tip of the North Pole. Take a look at this one. That's not a different angle. That's a different park. And this one, a third. I went down that reindeer hole quicker than you can say eggnog. I have questions.
Eggnog.
How many Santa-themed amusement parks are there? Why are there so many? What happened to them? Most importantly, who or what is responsible?
The case of the Santa parks. I imagine they would only do well in winter. At least, no, only well during December.
Exhibit A. Santa Claus is coming to town. In 1849, a small community was developed in rural Indiana. It wouldn't be until the early 1850s that the townspeople would organize an official township by means of applying for a post office. They submitted the application under the name Santa Fe, which the United States Postal Service rejected. The more recognized Santa Fe had been taken by the U.S. military just 8 years prior along with the rest of the New Mexico territory. But the reason for the Postal Service rejection was actually because there already was a Santa Fe, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis. The veto meant that the townspeople would have to rename their community. The town formerly known as Santa Fe, Indiana, would eventually decide on the name Santa Claus, Indiana. The legend told throughout the town was that the debate was settled on Christmas Eve, when the townspeople gathered in the church, and a gust of wind blew the front doors open, exposing the sound of sleigh bells in the distance. The children in the church, hearing the sounds, all ran to the door exclaiming, "It's Santa Claus!" and the name stuck. This story is apparently entirely made up, and the most likely reason is that someone said it as a joke in a meeting and no one could come up with anything else. The town officially became Santa Claus, Indiana on May 21st, 1856. Almost immediately, the town's post office received letters from children addressed to Santa Claus. It wouldn't be until over 50 years later in 1914 that the town's new postmaster, James Martin, would begin responding to a few of the letters as the Jolly Man himself. 16 years later, in 1929, Robert Ripley would feature the town in his popular newspaper series, Ripley's Believe It or Not. After this, the town's post office was flooded with letters, and Santa Claus, Indiana was given a national spotlight. Seeing a prime opportunity for some good old-fashioned Christmas commercialization, an attorney named Milton Harris approached Postmaster Martin about an idea to profit off of the attention the town was receiving. He suggested a Christmas-themed park where children could play and their parents could buy gifts. This idea could be considered the world's first themed attraction. Disneyland would not open for another 20 years, and Knott's Berry Farm was nothing more than a restaurant until 1940 and arguably not an amusement park until the late 60s. Postmaster Martin, now nationally recognized and referred to as simply Santa Claus, would pass away in April of 1935, just months before the park opened. Harris would open his creation, named Santa Claus Town, on December 22, 1935. The park boasted a candy castle and a toy village, complete with merchandise and sponsors. Despite Santa Claus, Indiana having a population of 67 people, 7,000 attended the opening.
Damn.
Harris was not celebrating, however, as on the other side of the town's only street, a Chicago businessman named Carl Barrett had erected a 22-foot granite statue of Kris Kringle. Not only was Barrett announcing his own Santa-themed amusement park, to be named Santa Claus Park, but he had also bought the land that Harris was leasing for Santa Claus Town, resulting in conflicting ownership of the land in Santa Claus. A highly publicized court battle ensued, with the entire country on the edge of their seat, waiting to find out who would get legal authority to milk the birth of Christ in a town of less than 100 people. The battles raged on for years, but the legal proceedings were not the only issue. A portrait of Santa Claus in Harris's Candy Castle came under fire for its depiction of the holiday icon holding a sword. The townspeople demanded that the sword be painted out and be replaced with a trumpet, which Harris did without question to better his chances of winning the court case. On the other end of the street, the statue that Barrett had advertised as granite had almost immediately developed a crack on its exterior, proving it to be merely concrete, which did not help his case. While the proceedings continued, an auto company would attempt to purchase the town of Santa Claus for $100,000, and a soda company would attempt a purchase of $750,000. The latter would be just under $14 million today when adjusted for inflation.
Damn.
Both attempts were unsuccessful, but they were proof of the small town's prominence in the late 1930s. By this point, the post office was receiving 60,000 letters a day during the Christmas season, and the new postmaster Oscar Phillips had enlisted the help of his wife and 5 children to respond to as many of the children's letters as possible. As if things couldn't get any more chaotic, a mysterious man purchased post office box number 1 in the town. The shipping name on the box was Santa Claus. Disappointingly, this was not the real Father Christmas come to save a town in way over their heads. It was a Michigan auto worker named Jack Cannon that had legally changed his name to Santa Claus in another attempt to profit off of the town's name. When he arrived to Santa Claus after the long journey from Michigan, he found that there was no room available in the town, a hilarious circumstance that was unfortunately overshadowed.
Oh my god, some guy had his legal name changed to Santa Claus. Just so he could try and profit off this.
Shadowed by the conflicting businessmen. The two continued to run their parks. Harris is operating under the company Santa Claus Inc., and Barrett's operating under the company Santa Claus of Santa Claus Inc. Finally, in July of 1940, the case made it all the way to the Indiana Supreme Court, which overturned a previous ruling halting Barrett's development of his park. This meant that Harris would not have a monopoly on the town of Santa Claus, but he would get to keep the land he built Santa Claus Town on, which unfortunately had become a lot less lucrative over the past 5 years. The United States' involvement in World War II in 1941 would end the hopes of a larger fairy tale theme park once dreamed by both entrepreneurs. But in 1946, a year after the war ended, the town of Santa Claus would catch the attention of yet another businessman. This man, Louis J. Koch, had much better intentions. After noticing that Santa Claus, Indiana lacked a meet and greet with the man himself, he set off to solve the problem, eventually landing on a year-round theme park called Santa Claus Land that opened on August 3, 1946. This is often credited as the first theme park in the world, as Koch's park was complete with a meet and greet, a restaurant, and attractions. The park was a huge success, and it would remain open for years, eventually rebranding to include other holidays and changing its name to Holiday World. The park continues to operate successfully today. Harris's Candy Castle also remains in the town of Santa Claus, seeing a regular use around the holiday season, and Barrett's statue still stands, now outside of a Santa Claus museum. The rise of Santa Claus, Indiana is a bizarre tale, but is merely the groundwork for my case. Commercializing Christmas with a Santa-themed theme park was a revolutionary concept, and as with any such idea, it would attract imitators.
I imagine it would.
Exhibit B, I'll Be Home for Christmas. In 1937, another town named Santa Claus would be established. This community was located in Arizona right off of the heavily trafficked Route 66. It was founded by Nina Talbot, a West Coast realtor who billed herself as the biggest real estate agent in California due to the fact that she weighed over 300 pounds. In the 1930s, Talbot had the idea to create an entire resort town themed around Kris Kringle, where she would take...
Oh my god. Seriously? You're really gonna use that as part of your shtick of the biggest real estate agent in California because of your weight. Really? You're really gonna go with that? What if you lose weight later on? You know, what if you like get slim? I don't think you can claim that anymore.
On the role of Mrs. Claus. The idea was a success. It was the perfect roadside attraction that one would expect to find alongside Route 66 during those days. Parents and children could come to meet Santa any day of the year, and the town's post office was the perfect spot for parents to send their children's letters to Santa. The town was also famous for the Santa Claus Inn, which was later renamed to the Christmas Tree Inn. The eatery served dishes such as chicken a la North Pole and rum pie a la Kris Kringle. Incredibly, the restaurant received high praise from the famous food critic Duncan Hines. After a 12-year run, Talbot realized her dreams of a full-blown resort town were falling short, as the only people who stayed in the town were the employees who worked there. She sold the town in 1949 as it was currently functioning as nothing more than a cute-themed roadside attraction that also had a restaurant. For a few years after that, the town of Santa Claus retained relevancy in American pop culture. The Christmas tree Inn drew celebrity visitors when actress Jane Russell threw a dinner party there in 1954. However, it seemed Christmas couldn't last forever. Once the popularity of Route 66 died down, so too did the popularity of the town called Santa Claus, eventually leading to its fate as a roadside ghost town. Today, the town of Santa Claus has officially been removed from Arizona maps, but those that drive past will see the remains of what was once the holliest, jolliest town in the West. Exhibit C. Do you believe in Santa Claus? The first Santa-themed theme park not to be located in a town named Santa Claus would open in Wilmington, New York in the summer of 1949. Created by local businessman Julian Rice, Santa's Workshop allowed children to visit the North Pole, with various buildings being constructed, each with a unique activity inside. The park was an immediate success, seeing 50,000 visitors in the first 2 months of operation. Walt Disney himself was rumored to have visited the park before the opening of Disneyland to consult with Rice on the design of Santa's Workshop. The humble park is still open today, but its popularity has declined significantly, and the management is having trouble making ends meet. As the park's current owner Doug Waterbury described it, the problem seems to be that in the 1950s, quote, a 13-year-old might still believe in Santa Claus. It's unusual today that a kid over 7 or 8 still believes. There's an urgency to get families to bring their kids here before they grow away. The park is still open, but its future is uncertain. Exhibit D. Baby, It's Cold Outside.
I imagine
Born in
these
1918,
places would
Glenn
be
Holland
most
grew up in
popular in
Arcadia,
December
California,
only.
and spent his childhood years surviving the Great Depression. By the time he turned 18, both his parents had passed away, leaving him the sole caretaker of his younger sister. Holland's drive to build a theme park came from his desire to give kids like his sister a place where they could escape reality. According to his daughter, Pamela Holland Reese, quote, he wanted Christmas to be just magical. He always thought that children should have adventures and great happiness in their lives. He wanted to make that come true. Holland was supposedly inspired by Santa's Workshop in Wilmington. In the early 50s, Holland began sketching out his own version of a Christmas theme park. He wanted his park filled to the brim with holiday magic, larger-than-life festive attractions that would immerse visitors in the Christmas spirit. He took this concept and began selling it to investors. Holland leased land in Lake Arrowhead, California, just north of San Bernardino, and it was there that his Christmas fantasy, Santa's Village, would come to life in the spring of 1955, just 6 weeks before Disneyland would open. On that opening weekend, the park's general contractor recalled that the traffic was, quote, backed up all the way down the mountain. Thanks to Holland, Christmas had come to California early, and it was a smash hit, but he wasn't done yet. Holland went on to open 2 more Santa's Village theme parks. The first would be located in Scotts Valley, California, and would open in 1958. This marked the first time a theme park had ever been franchised in the United States. The Santa's Village parks were filled with petting zoos, live reindeer that would pull a sleigh, train rides, something called a whirling Christmas tree ride, and holiday-themed playground areas for children to explore. Part of Holland's success was his commitment to theming. He even went so far as to develop a passport ticket that families could use instead of paying cash. Families would get their ticket punched for every purchase they made throughout the park, and then the parents would cash out their ticket at the end of the day with an employee. Holland believed that this would preserve the magic for the children. The third and final Santa's Village would open in 1959 in East Dundee, a suburb of Chicago, Illinois. Tragically, this park would be considered the downfall of the Santa's Village theme parks. It seemed that moving east would be a smart business decision, considering the immense popularity of the first 2 parks in California. However, Chicago's climate is slightly different than that of Southern California, notably the existence of a winter season. The decision to develop in East Dundee was a huge misstep for the franchise, as the park couldn't even be open on or around Christmas. And for a park themed entirely around that concept, this did not exactly bode well for business. When investors began to panic and pull out in 1965, a broken-hearted Holland sold the business and officially left the company. He lived out the rest of his life as a real estate developer and passed away in 2002. The park in Scotts Valley would close in 1979, the one in Lake Arrowhead would eventually close in 1998, and the park in East Dundee would surprisingly last until 2006. The parks would sit abandoned for years. Eventually, the parks in Lake Arrowhead and East Dundee would reopen in 2016 and 2011 respectively, under new management. They now operate a Sky Park at Santa's Village and Santa's Village Amusement Park. The Amusement Park, as that terrible pun implies, is now more of a zoo, and Sky Park at Santa's Village is oddly enough part BMX course. Though these parks had evolved drastically from their original forms, they both remember their roots and pay homage to their original creator. Glenn Holland came from hardship to build something magical and full of whimsy, a place for people to forget about life for a little while and celebrate a popular holiday year-round. According to his daughter, quote, he knew he had touched people with those parks. It was the most special thing he felt he had ever done. Exhibit E. Where Are You, Christmas? Parque Albanol in Brazil was meant to be the largest theme park in the entire country, and it was going to be comprised of multiple themed lands, including an Old West town, a water park, a concert hall, and more, spanning over 38 million square meters. For comparison, that's about a third of the size of the entire Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. The park's creator was politician Antonio Albano Reis, who had a knack for dressing up as Saint Nick during the holidays. His love of Christmas culminated in the idea for the park, but he was tragically struck and killed by a car just outside of the park's entrance during construction in 2004. Without its fearless leader at the helm, the plans for Parque Albanol were abandoned. Today, there are a plethora of truly eerie photographs that can be found. Massive candy canes and galloping reindeer stand rushing amongst a jungle backdrop, and Santa heads with gaping mouths, frozen and permanent ho-ho-hos, will surely replace those sugar plums dancing in your head at night. Exhibit F, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. In the mid-1950s, radio pioneer Jack Papel put up $125,000 for the creation of yet another Santa theme park in Vermont. The product was a small Christmas town with such attractions as a post office and a ding-dong school. It would also feature a petting zoo where children could get up close and personal with reindeer. The animals attracted not only families, but also one lazy hunter that purposefully shot 2 of the captive animals. Santa's Land in Putney, Vermont opened on August 10, 1957. Papel would add more attractions to the park, most notably a Humpty Dumpty roller coaster in 1960. He would own the park for another decade before selling it in 1970 to a local family who would own it for the next 30 years. The park would be passed to yet another owner in the early 2000s, but this is when luck for Santa's Land would run out. The new owner was struggling to turn a profit off of the over 50-year-old park, and in 2011, the park announced that it would not reopen for the 2012 season. An auction of the park's remaining assets were planned for 2012, but the event was canceled when the park had mysteriously been purchased by an anonymous buyer. Speculation of the buyer's identity ranged from Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin to WWE superstar Mick Foley. It turned out that the new owner was Vermont local Lillian Belowicz and her family. She announced her excitement in acquiring the park and for the upcoming 2013 season, although concerns were raised about the park's condition, as many of the attractions and facilities had not been updated for decades. These concerns were not misplaced. Santa's Land underperformed in its first season under new ownership, and the park closed its doors, with no plans for a 2014 season. Things would only get worse from there. In March 2014, when a county sheriff visited the park to return a lost license plate that belonged to the park's animal handler, Brian Deisler, he felt that something wasn't right in Santa's Land. An investigation of the property was launched by the county sheriff's department. Investigators found 18 animal carcasses, 16 deer, a pheasant, and a pot-bellied pig. The petting zoo animals that were still alive were extremely malnourished and on the brink of starvation or dehydration. Belowicz and Deisler were both arraigned with a misdemeanor and forced to follow strict guidelines to save the animals. Another sweep of the property in September of that year revealed that the guidelines were not being met, resulting in the confiscation of many of the petting zoo's animals. Only 17 deer would remain in the park's hands, with the goats, donkeys, ponies, emus, and llamas being put up for adoption. Belowicz would file for bankruptcy around this time, and the park would remain closed, falling into disrepair. The park quickly became worn by weather, vandals, and thieves, appearing as if it had been abandoned for decades in just a few months. It would remain abandoned for years, until in 2017, when a man named David Haversat would reopen the park. He did his best to repair the tattered buildings and attractions, as well as adding some new offerings. Unfortunately, a statue of Humpty Dumpty was completely destroyed, and no one could put it back together again. Haversat did not reopen the park's petting zoo for obvious reasons, although he left the pen standing in case he ever changed his mind. Haversat did an incredible job saving the historic park. He would even receive the Preservation Trust of Vermont Award for his effort in restoring Santa's Land. Exhibit G, 12 Days of Christmas. Opened in 1953, Santa's Village in Jefferson, New Hampshire is one of the most successful themed amusement parks in the world. The management's dedication to adding new rides has resulted in a modern park despite the antiquated theming. The park is still thriving today. In 1955, another Santa's Village opened outside of Bracebridge, Ontario. It is a similar setup to all of the other Santa theme parks, but one unique feature is this awesome-looking reindeer roller coaster, or at least I thought it was unique until I found that 2 other Santa theme parks had the exact same ones. The park is still operating today, and it has expanded to include ziplining and ropes courses. Santa's Workshop is another currently operating Santa-themed amusement park located in Cascade, Colorado. The family-run park opened in 1956, and it is still owned and operated by its founders. In 1966, another Santa's Land would open in Cherokee, North Carolina with a similar concept and execution as the others. It is also still operating today. Opening in Miami in the 1980s, Santa's Enchanted Forest claims that it is the largest holiday theme park in the world, with over 100 festive activities to choose from. Santa Claus Village opened its doors in Finland in 1985 and remains a booming tourist destination to this day. The park is located inside the Arctic Circle, an ideal backdrop for the official hometown of Santa Claus. You can meet Santa year-round, and the park has a special event on Christmas Eve where visitors can count down and watch their beloved Santa Claus ride off into the sunset on a sleigh pulled by actual reindeer. On December 8, 1984, Santa World in Mora, Sweden opened its doors. The park is a recreation of the North Pole, and families continue to come to meet Santa and his elves, tour his workshop, meet his reindeer, and encounter whatever this thing is.
Encounter whatever this thing
Conclusions.
is.
My findings revealed 3 abandoned and reopened, and 9 operating Santa-themed theme parks. This is enough to fill my stockings, but when you look at each individual case together, a strange pattern emerges. Notice that 8 of these theme parks opened within 10 years between 1949 and 1959. Only one of them opened in the 1960s, and then none in the 1970s. All of a sudden, 3 more pop up in the 1980s. The only Santa park to be constructed in the 2000s was Park Avenel, and since then, no major Santa-themed amusement parks have been developed. My focus is on these 2 peaks, in the 40s and 50s, and again in the 80s. The peak in the 40s and 50s actually has a simple explanation. Before World War II, Germany was a major manufacturer of the Christmas products that the United States and other countries imported for the season. This included decorations and toys. After World War II, with Germany's manufacturing industry destroyed and the United States stronger than ever, the US was able to produce the necessary Christmas products and then some. It was in this area that Christmas made a large impact on popular culture. Most recognizable movies, songs, and also theme parks came from the 1940s and 50s. The slump in Christmas culture in the late 60s and 70s and rebound in the 80s is where my theories come in. My first theory is that the typical cycle of media resulted in the short hiatus. Pop culture comes in waves, sometimes naturally by Hollywood's inability to sustain quality production, and sometimes purposefully by companies attempting to avoid consumer fatigue. This is evident just by looking at the Christmas films produced in the 70s versus those produced in the 80s. This could be the reason that the Santa-themed amusement park trend came back for a short time in the 80s in the US and European countries. The second theory is that the slump in the 60s and 70s was a result of the lack of Christmas celebration during World War II. Children growing up in the 30s and 40s would be raising children of their own in the 60s and 70s, and if they grew up with a lack of Christmas commercialization during the Depression and Second World War, they would presumably be less likely to give their children the same holiday experience that those growing up in the 50s enjoyed. Likewise, those children growing up in the 50s would be raising their own children in the late 70s and 80s. That demographic would be more likely to give their children the commercial Christmas experience, similar to the one they had in the years after the war. This theory seems to be corroborated by a study from the Pew Research Center, revealing that children that were raised in the 1940s, 50s, 80s, and 90s reported that Santa visited them on Christmas Eve more often than those that were raised in the 60s and 70s. As with most cases, the moment you publish your findings, the more evidence comes out. Did I miss any parks? Could I have brushed over any events in my research? These are the kind of things that keep me up at night. But this time of year I don't mind it. Seeing the snow float to the ground, blurred by the frigid air clinging onto the window pane, beautiful lights wrapped around houses and trees, and in the distance, sleigh bells? Could it be? Santa Claus.
Now that was interesting. I didn't think that Santa Claus theme parks would do all too well. Except in December, and only December. Because once New Year hits, it's like, oh yeah, Christmas is over. Chop down your trees now. Santa Claus is illegal. Like, once December is over, I feel like the Christmas mood just kind of, it's like done with. And of course, in the US, at the very end of November is Thanksgiving, so people are still celebrating that. It's not until December starts that you get the Christmas feeling in the US. Although I imagine in other parts of the world, the Christmas season starts a bit earlier than December 1st. Called herself the biggest real estate owner in California because she weighed over 300 pounds. Now that is a businesswoman who knows how to turn lemons into lemonade. Those parks will come back one day when Disney ends up owning Christmas. Thankfully, Michael Eisner had nothing to do with this. Thankfully, Eisner wasn't involved. Oh my god. That was fun. That was fun. These videos are good, even though most of what we watched today was just Disney. Or did he? Or did he what? Wait, what are you referring to? Oh, Eisner. I mean, I don't think he had anything to do with this. I think. Unless he's, like, moonlighting as a different person. Has something to do with it failing. If a theme park ever fails, just blame Eisner. Ah, my theme park failed. Damn you, Eisner. But yeah, that was fun. And thank you everyone for stopping by. Hope y'all had fun. I know I did. Yeah. Defunctland. That's a good channel. Everyone like and subscribe, okay? Alright. Alright, let me see who's on right now so I can go raid. For the briefest of moments, I thought, who's playing Genshin? And then I thought, oh right, everyone's playing Genshin. Alright. Give me a second. How about this person? Alright, just gotta sit through this ad real quick. Oh, they have a cat cam. Alright. My fair praxis. Here we go. Alright. Yeah, thanks for being here. Remember to, rest up, hydrate, eat all the tasty stuff. Plenty of that good jazz, and peace!